Well, good morning, everybody, and to councillors, council staff, members of the public who have joined us in the gallery, the media, those who are joining us on live stream. Welcome to this October ordinary meeting of the Sunshine Coast Council. I'd ask the chamber to be upstanding whilst we acknowledge the traditional custodians. And the Sunshine Coast Council acknowledges the Kabi peoples and the Eumundi peoples whose lands and waters we all now share. The traditional owners' unique values and ancient enduring cultures deepen and enrich the life of our communities. The Sunshine Coast has been a place of celebration, abundance, connection and kinship for thousands of years, and we commit to working with the traditional owners to continue these practices and support self-determination through economic and community development. Truth-telling is a significant part of our journey, and legacy issues resulting from colonisation are still experienced by traditional owners and First Nations people. We're committed to better understanding the collective history of the Sunshine Coast traditional owners and experiences of First Nations people. We recognise our shared history and will continue to work in partnership to provide a foundation for building a shared future with the Kabi and Eumundi peoples. We pay our respects to the traditional owners of the Sunshine Coast, to their elders past, present, and acknowledge the important role First Nations people play to continue to play within our Sunshine Coast community. Together we're all stronger. Please remain upstanding while I invite Pastor Mike Hardy from the Good Life Community Church to read a prayer. Thanks, Mike.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's good to be with you all here this morning. I just want to say thank you for the support and just want to acknowledge on behalf of Good Life Centre and our church community the support that we have on an ongoing basis, and just want to acknowledge Mayor Jamieson for your 11 years service in the community, and we thank you for that and all who serve in this chamber. Let us pray. Gracious and merciful God, creator of this ever-expanding universe, may we pause before you with humbled hearts, full of gratitude and joy, acknowledging your boundless love and endless grace. You have blessed us with the gift of life and breath, of community, friendship, and love. Your vision for humanity is shalom, the Hebrew word, peace, harmony, wholeness, and the welfare of all, the way things are meant to be. We acknowledge there is much unrest and suffering in our world at present, and we ask that peace would come fast. I want to give you thanks for every person in this council, every leader, every team member that is here to serve our community, and those who will be recognised for their service today. May you give increasing wisdom to every councillor, to our mayor, and all who serve in council. Lord God, I pray that your blessing of peace would be upon every person in this council. Where there is stress, may there be peace. Where there is complexity, may you bring clarity. Where there is difference of opinion and perspective, may you help us to listen, learn, and graciously work towards good outcomes. May wisdom lead to clarity and wise decisions as our council fulfil their duties, upholding justice and safeguarding our community from harm. May our actions always be guided by truth and compassion that serve our community in helping the most vulnerable and creating a vibrant community of joy and peace that celebrates the diversity of this great land. We express our heartfelt gratitude for the beautiful Sunshine Coast where we call home, with its varied businesses, churches, schools, education centres, community groups, families and individuals. May the Sunshine Coast be a beacon of light, a place of peace and vibrancy, where love and compassion flow freely and where the vulnerable are protected and lifted up. I commit this assembly of servant-hearted leaders to you and say thank you, God, for their dedicated service. May love win every day. And I pray all these things in the name of our the greatest servant leader of all, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Hardy. Please be seated. I'd like to acknowledge that we have an apology from Councillor Landsberg. and also acknowledge that we have Councillor O'Prey joining us via Teams. Welcome, Councillor O'Prey. The minutes of our ordinary meeting held on the 21st of September 2023 have been distributed. Someone prepared to confirm? Councillor Dixon moved, Councillor Babarowski seconded. All those in favour of receipt? Can I see your hand, Councillor? Thank you. Yep, that's carried unanimously. There's no mayoral minute. Just in respect of item 6, councillors, I remind you of the requirements under the Local Government Regulation 2012, which sets out how councillors' conflicts of interest are managed in local government matters. These requirements apply to how we deal with such matters at this meeting. If there is a prescribed conflict of interest or a declarable conflict of interest, please raise that before we deal with the item. We'll go straight to presentations, and the first presentation is to Councillor Dixon, the ParkSmart program. Thank you, Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, good morning, Mr Mayor. And I've got some notes here to read. I'm proud to present you with the National Award for Council's ParkSmart Static School Camera Trial at the Buderim Mountain State School in Division 7. Council's ParkSmart program, in collaboration with Sensen, were recently nominated for the Excellence in Technology and Innovation Award. Council recently responded to concerns raised in the Buderim Mountain State School area in relation to impacts being experienced at the morning drop-off and afternoon pickup times where people park unlawfully or overstay the designated time limits. Buderim Mountain State School PNC felt they had exhausted all their education and alternate parking options and sought support from the council to provide the regulation in the area. These activities impact the flow of traffic, add risks at school drop-off and pick-up time for pedestrian and road users. Monitoring parking in person or using the ParkSmart vehicle proved to be ineffective and cost-prohibitive. The team responded by trialling static cameras at key points around the school, and this has changed the driver behaviour overnight. There's a big team over here. Hello, g'day. You snuck in well. We are seeing real improvements on the ground, and more importantly, there has been a positive change in travel and parking around the school. The trial is currently in its assessment phase to understand how the activity can be scaled in a sustainable way to enable council to provide similar services in other locations, particularly around school zones on the Sunshine Coast. So, with all that said, congratulations. I can see Nikki Clements, Hayley Murphy, Philip Green, Debbie Hedger, Elise Sondergeld, Suzanne Gothier, Sensen, and the regulated parking team. And it's a big team and it's a big job. So well done on this. And Mr Mayor, if I can just say, I think we all know as councillors that parking issues around schools are difficult. In fact, probably some of the biggest trip generators in the region are from our local schools, because we know when school holidays happens, the local road network in our areas is usually a little bit better. Doesn't fix the Sunshine Motorway and the Bruce, but it gets a bit easier. I'm actually quite excited about some of this because I'd like to see it implemented potentially in Division 6 and other areas, so it's something worth looking at. But congratulations to the team. It's not an easy job. It comes with a lot of criticism from the public, but it's a job that has to be done. So congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon.
Outside voice.
So I'll take that as moved by Councillor Dixon. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Johnston, all those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. The next presentation is Councillor Johnston, the Community Engagement and Education Program National Award. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It says here that I'm proud to present, but I'm excited also to present this National Award for Council's Community Engagement and Education Program relating to responsible animal management. Following success at the Local Government Management Awards, our pet education program has been recognised with a national award at the Australian Institute of Animal Management annual conference. This award is proof that Council is recognised as a leader in community engagement and education relating to responsible pet ownership. The Smart Paws Pet Awareness Program was developed to educate children, their parents and the local community. The interactive education program on responsible pet ownership and dog bite prevention is presented at kindergartens and primary schools in the Sunshine Coast local government region. Our proactive education program is implemented through a variety of initiatives to provide information on responsible pet ownership. Education pop-up booths 3 times a week at various locations in our region. Attending local and large events that cater for pets and non-pet owners. Cater for pet and non-pet owners. An annual dog safety week and awareness about keeping pets and people safe. Dog and cat mascots created to promote pet ownership events, these are very popular with the young people. Partnership with our local rescues, RSPCA, Four Paws and Sunshine Coast Animal Refuge to promote adopt, don't shop messages. To complement the program, our first children's picture book, When Sammy Met Sunny, was written and illustrated by Sunshine Coast Council officers. The book follows a boy named Sammy who wants to prove to his parents he is responsible in his desire to own a dog. To follow on the success of this first book, a second book in the series has just recently been released, Sammy and Sunny, With Love Comes Responsibility. The aim of this book is to educate all children on how to stay safe around dogs, to support all families and educators to encourage responsible pet ownership and to create a safe and harmonious existence between people, pets and places. The program has contributed to a decrease, and this is amazing, of 40% in reported dog attacks on children under 12, a true example of the power of education. I'd like to, on behalf of the Council, I'd like to congratulate Hannah Maloney and her team for their passion and creative initiatives to engage our pet owners of the future and support the community. Now, I've had the opportunity to observe a number of our officers in dealing with pets and pet education, etc., and how they work together with the other organisations. And they are very, very capable, extremely good at the job they do. And on behalf of the Council, I thank them all for that. In addition, something that we can all be proud of is that the Sunshine Coast Council, together with the other groups like the Refuge, has the lowest, if not the lowest, one of the lowest euthanasia rates of dogs and cats in Australia. And that is really something we can be proud of, between educating the dogs and the owners, because quite often the problem's not so much the dog, but the owner. So in the education process, and I'd like to congratulate you and thank you all for doing such a great job, and you deserve this award.
Exactly. Okay, so moved Councillor Johnston, seconded Councillor Dixon. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. And our third item, Councillor Babarowski. Council has won 2 gold awards in the Give Your Business a Boost of Vitamin SC. Thank you, Councillor Babarowski.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, staff. It's certainly my privilege today to recognise Council's achievement in winning 2 marketing gold medals presented at the International Economic Development Council conference held in Dallas, Texas on the 19th of September. So Sunshine Coast Council won gold in 2 categories, multimedia video production and paid advertising campaign for the Give Your Business a Boost of Vitamin SC video series. Before we get to the presentation, I'd like to share a bit of the backstory of how we ended up here today. So when the Regional Economic Development Strategy, known as the REDS, was endorsed by Council in 2013, it outlined a vision to achieve a more diversified and resilient regional economy. The REDS recognised that more formal promotion was needed to attract broader business investment if all the 7 high-value industries identified were to grow and prosper. So, via the newly created Invest Sunshine Coast brand, Council sought to create a positive change to this viewpoint by demonstrating the successful local businesses what they were experiencing and communicating this as part of the region's investment value proposition. So the Vitamins SC campaign recognised that, well, city dwellers had begun to look to the regions for a better work-lifestyle balance en masse. The trick was to attract businesses to also make the move, not just the people. So Vitamin SC has not only made significant inroads into capitalising on the changing visitor perception of the Sunshine Coast as a place for business, but also gained national recognition for Council, highlighting it as a creative and contemporary organisation like the community it seeks to support. So back to the awards. And you might wonder, well, who are the IEDC? Who are they? Well, it's a global industry organisation of over 5,000 professional economic development members across the United States, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, India and Asia. Among the 100 or so awards provided at this global event, only 6 were awarded to areas outside Canada and the USA. And out of those 6, 2 were awarded to the Sunshine Coast. When I read that, I must admit, I pondered the table conversation around in America, and some American go to another American and go, where's the Sunshine Coast? Quick Google, oh, it's British Columbia, Canada. That doesn't look right with the present. Oh, apparently it's Australia. Oh, Austria. No, Australia. Yeah, that's what I said, Austria. So I can imagine that at least some awareness of the Sunshine Coast has developed in Dallas, Texas. It is worth pointing out that further, we're the only region in Australia to be recognised at this level. That's quite an achievement. A little bit about the Vitamin SC initiative. The Vitamin SC campaign was led by Council and put together by our talented local businesses. And today in the gallery we have Casey McNeil and Carly Blunt from McNeil & Co., a local marketing agency, who drove the creative vision and the advertising strategy, and Lauren Panrucker from Tide Productions, who directed the video. G'day, guys. Local cast and crew were used to produce the videos, as well as prominent local businesses, including Huddle Insurance, now Open Insurance, and Spark Bureau, who both provided their offices free of charge for the location sites. So what we have is the Vitamin C campaigns, and what did they achieve in the target markets of Greater Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne? It's impressive. From July 2020, when the first campaign, season 1, commenced, to March 23, which covered season 2 of the campaign, Council's investment attraction activities created 17 investment outcomes, delivering economic impact of $843 million and over 2,700 full-time jobs to the region. Let that sink in. Council's work in investment attraction is not just getting national cut-through, but global firms are starting to arrive in our region, including recently announced the NASDAQ-listed company Genpact, that employs literally hundreds of thousands of people globally. So the Sunshine Coast wants to and deserves to be seen as an investment destination of choice for smart, innovative and tech-based businesses. thanks to the work being done by Council through the Economic Development team, we can be confident that we can achieve our goals. Alex Levershaw and Louise Lowe from the team are here today to receive the awards on behalf of Council, but I'd also like to acknowledge the broader team of Danielle, Nikki and Wendy. It's my privilege today, as the Deputy Mayor, to be representing the Economic Development Portfolio Councillors of Councillor Lansborough and Councillor Prey, and of course all my councillor colleagues. We all really do take great pride in being part of our region's broader economic development progress, and we look forward to what the team comes up with next, and to keep up our national and international investment focus firmly on our region's remarkable, smart, health and creative as a region. And I'd just like to again say, I watched the videos again. Cam's a legend. Cam's the central figure. I think the lightness of touch in that campaign was absolute genius. So well done to everybody involved. Two very well-deserved awards, and I'd like the Mayor to join me in presenting them.
Thank you. So I have Councillor Babarowski moving and Councillor O'Prey has indicated he'd like to second. All those
Thank you,
in
Mr.
favour? Thanks, Jason. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move to our reports. 8.1 is the Sunshine Coast Regional Economic Development Strategy Annual Report, and I invite Anthony Edgar to give us that presentation. Thanks, Anthony. Supported by Tim McGee, Alex Levershaw.
Thank you and good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. I have the pleasure to present for your consideration the annual report for the Regional Economic Development Strategy, or REDS, for the 2022-23 financial year. In terms of key economic indicators or aspirational goals for the REDS, I draw your attention to the key results as presented here. GRP increased by 8.1% to $2.9 billion this financial year. This compares to 5.3% for the previous year and 1.4% during the depths of COVID impacts. High-value industry employment opportunities increased by 15% to 91,847. This represents a 12,000 full-time equivalent job increase in the financial year. 18% of goods and services were produced for export outside the region, an increase of 2.3%, again showing the recovery from COVID impacts, which was below 1% for that period. Importantly, household income levels for the Sunshine Coast are now just 4.8% below the state average, after staying 16.8% below in 2013 for the Sunshine Coast local government area specifically, or 22% for the broader region, somewhat mitigating the impacts of inflation and housing costs. A diverse range of actions and initiatives have been delivered by Council and our regional partners across the key delivery pathways of the REDS. These reflect the broader suite of economic disciplines deployed in order to achieve the desired outcomes. These include investment attractions we've just heard, trade and international to industry development, major events, place activation and local business support. A few examples reflecting these actions under the delivery pathways include, firstly, leadership, collaboration and identity. We continue to work closely with our key regional industry groups such as the Manufacturing Excellence Forum and Food and Agribusiness Network, but also emerging groups such as the screen industry. CI-ISAC, the Critical Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Centre, came into being, leveraging the international broadband network and addressing a critical market gap. A brand perception survey to provide baseline information for input into key branding and marketing actions was undertaken, as well as diverse and targeted investment attraction campaigns such as the much awarded one we've just heard about today. The capital investment pathway saw a range of significant investment wins for the region, including 6 wins delivering over $286 million in economic benefit. An updated regional investment prospectus was completed, and the first project under the Testing Tech in Paradise cable leveraging initiative undertaken. In terms of high-value industries, we supported the key fan-led Meet the Makers event to drive business development and export opportunities. We saw success in the Smart 21 Intelligent Community Forum, Top 7 Awards and delivery of the Mayor's Telstra Innovation Awards. We had involvement in the Caloundra Aerodrome Master Plan project from scoping and inception through to current implementation, and we successfully continued to roll out the Aspire Circular Economy platform. Under Local to Global, the International Forum was rightly also awarded for its success, a highly successful trade capability program delivered, and we also had a successful mission to the ICF Global Summit. Importantly, we also adopted a key strategic policy to build upon moving forward in the international space. Finally, under Talent and Skills, we saw a successful delivery of a range of initiatives, including the Gap Year Here, Jobs Hubs, Build a Better Business program and place activation across key regional precincts such as Nambour and Caloundra. Moving on to economic development annual service results, the branch is continuing to deliver strong engagement and significant economic outcomes. We're tracking above identified targets for all key service elements, with direct and indirect economic impact being over $380 million, jobs supported reaching nearly 2,000, and clients assisted being well over target at 11,150, indicating a strong demand for services across the branch. Finally, I'd like to conclude by thanking my colleagues in Council for their commitment and culture, and indeed all our regional stakeholders for those same attributes in delivery of the regional strategy, and some of those people are here in the chamber today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Someone to move? Councillor Johnston. Can you hear me okay, Councillor O'Prey?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, did you want to move this?
Yes, I'd love to. Yes, please, I'd love to do that if that's possible.
Okay, yep, no trouble. You don't mind being the second to Councillor Winston? Okay, would you like to open, Councillor O'Prey?
Yes, and thank you, Mr Mayor, and greetings from Central Australia. And firstly, thank you to Nat and Lauren for helping us get the connection here early this morning. Mr Mayor, what a wonderful annual report. It shows a lot of initiative, particularly from our staff, and a lot of staff need thanks today, and I'll probably go through this a little bit later on as well, but particularly Greg Laverty, and in his place in recent times is Grantley Switzer, but also to Andrew Eves-Brown, who's recently left the organisation to move on to other things, but in his absence, we've obviously had Anthony Edgar in his very capable hands. Mr Mayor, Councillor Terry's also away, so I'd also like to acknowledge Councillor Terry Landsberg for his work within the economic portfolio as well. Mr Mayor, a lot of highlights throughout this report. The annual report's an amazing thing. I'd particularly like to acknowledge the smaller details that go through throughout the year. We get a lot of businesses come to the Sunshine Coast that want to set up. We get a lot of information coming to us from all different avenues, and our staff are extraordinary in the way that they get back to these people and really create a warm and welcome feeling as they come into the business of the Sunshine Coast. So those sorts of things are really important when we're trying to establish and get greater depth in our businesses across the region. The highlight is, without doubt, the $20.9 billion economy. Now, the Sunshine Coast Council's never said, and we're not about promoting the fact that we are generating all this income for the region. This is the entire economy. $20.9 billion, albeit council somewhat is the team captain. We're the custodian, if you like. And to be quite honest, I think we're the team leader at the highest level, and the community understand that as well. So, Mr Mayor, I'd very happily like to put this forward for council today. I'd like to see the council supported, of course, but most importantly, congratulations to all the staff that have managed to put this annual report together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Prey. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to share a quick story that happened to me recently. I received an email from a company based in Canada who specialised in robotics. And they reached out to us specifically because we were recognised as one of the top 7 intelligent communities. And they reached out to the Sunshine Coast Australia, not to Sunshine Coast Vancouver, just profiling that fact there. And that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't have implemented all of the activities we did over the past 12 months, which work collectively hand in hand. All of the infrastructure that we've put together, all of the forums that we've attended, all of the industries that we've pursued. So the initial feedback is the team are reaching out to that company, so it shows some promise. You know, there may be something great in there. It's going to, if it does develop, it will lead to more high-value jobs here in our region, and also will cement our reputation internationally. So I just wanted to congratulate the team and use that as an example of how the work that you are doing is actually showing benefits here on the ground.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, further to what Councillor Suarez has just shared with us, I think that the funding that we as a council put back into the economic development branch, when you go through those highlights for the 22-23 financial year, it just goes to show that that's money well invested back into the Sunshine Coast, especially the local economy. But for me, one of the great stats that really springs out on the page was that, you know, a relatively small team, and, you know, there has been a couple of staff changes along the way there. So I just wanted to acknowledge that they've assisted over 11,000 clients. That is phenomenal. Their phones and emails must be running hot. But well done to the team. This is a big achievement, and I'll certainly be supporting it here today.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. If there are no further speakers, I'll go back to Councillor O'Prey to close, if that's necessary.
Not necessary, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much, and thank you to all the staff again. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks very much, Anthony and team. Well done. We'll go now to the Sunshine Coast Regional Economic Development Strategy Refresh and Implementation Plan for 2023 to 2028. And again, I call on Anthony to give us a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mayor and Councillors. Since 2013, the Regional Economic Development Strategy has provided a collective vision and blueprint for our economy, a mechanism for change towards a prosperous, resilient economy of choice for business investment and employment, one not based simply on organic growth. It's important to note that the REDS is one of 3 regional strategies which collectively provide guidance for a balanced approach to maintaining the livability of our region, the productivity of our economy, whilst retaining and strengthening our natural assets. As committed to at the genesis of the REDS in 2013, 5 yearly reviews were to be conducted to ensure that the REDS remained relevant and responsive to both opportunities and challenges faced by the region. This review has now been completed and is the subject of this report. As conveyed in the REDS annual report, there has been significant progress against the REDS goals in terms of GRP, high-value jobs, exports and household income. A legacy issue is that the REDS reporting currently includes the Noosa local government area, which is recommended to be excised under the REDS review. The Sunshine Coast specifically is nevertheless on track to achieve all identified goals despite this new approach. The REDS review process commenced in early 2013 with the appointment of Lucid Economics to work with Council in delivery of the refresh. This process was, as stated, a review, not a total rewrite or start from scratch approach. The process consisted of essentially 4 stages, they being initial scoping, detailed economic analysis, consultation and engagement with key stakeholders, and finally a revised REDS incorporating an updated 5-year action plan as presented to you here today. Consultation was conducted in 2 key stages. The first consisted of a town hall event targeting all key regional stakeholders to commence the process, capture initial stakeholder feedback and convey initial research undertaken. A large-scale business survey sent to over 20,000 local businesses resulted in a statistically significant level of response. Internal and external workshops and one-on-one interviews with key stakeholders were also undertaken. Stage 2 of the process utilised a draft version of the refreshed REDS sent to all invitees to the consultation activities just referred to as part of Stage 1, all respondents to the business survey and all councillors and members of Council's executive leadership team. This resulted in 14 submissions from internal and external sources as included in your council report. Feedback was generally positive, but with a range of suggestions across social, economic and environmental issues, including greater clarity around some elements of the draft REDs. These submissions were assessed by the consultant and economic development team and appropriate amendments made. It's important to note that there was strong support for continuity of action and carryover of existing REDS elements given the success of the strategy to date. This includes such elements as the vision and components of the transition to the new economy plus retention of the 4 outcomes being sought. They being a $33 billion economy, 100,000 high-value jobs, 20% of regional output exported and household income above the state average. As mentioned, this is the second 5-yearly review of the REDs. The first iteration of the REDs, the first of its kind for the region, was notable for its focus on driving key game changer projects, focusing on 7 key high-value industries and applying 5 pathways of action across these areas of focus to deliver the outcomes sought. In 2018, at the first 5-yearly review, essentially all elements were carried over, although there was a reduced emphasis on the 7 high-value industries and a greater focus on the 5 delivery pathways. The 2023 refresh represents something of a middle ground. It highlights key economies of focus incorporating the 7 high-value industries plus key niche opportunities under knowledge, digital, production, green, visitor and place-based economies. It retains and amends the 5 strategic pathways, and it also recognises not just the opportunities but also the challenges faced if the new economy objective is to be delivered, in particular housing and transport infrastructure. As mentioned, the refresh REDs retains an emphasis around the previous high-value industries but identifies a range of niche and emerging opportunities which, like the high-value industries, are included under the aforementioned 6 economies of focus. Many of these new elements are linked to the 7 high-value industries or have emerged in recent times through factors such as technological change, market forces and societal focus. A few examples of these include the circular economy, cybersecurity, First Nations and accessible tourism, the film industry and elements of defence. Overall, key amendments and changes to the REDs include an increased focus on sustainability and circular economy, an increased focus on equity and inclusion, a more holistic approach to the economy, essentially representing an evolution and building on the high-value industries. And in terms of pathways, Pathway 1 is amended to focus on sustainability and equity. Pathway 2 is now focused more on investment attraction rather than purely direct capital investment alone. Pathway 3 has been revised to focus on business retention and expansion across the economy, and this includes support for local business to export. Pathway 4 replaced local to global with a focus on innovation, technological advancement and scaling up, whilst Pathway 5 retained a focus on talent attraction and skills, both in terms of talent attraction and retention. In summary, as part of the overall intent to make the document more concise and reflective of its broader regional audience, the Refresh REDs includes a strategy on a page which reflects these key changes and areas of focus, they being the 6 key economies and industries as the verticals, 5 strategic pathways and key actions as enablers across all the economies and industries, key regional delivery partners, sustainable development goals relevant to economic development specifically, plus key REDs outcomes or goals sought. The Refresh REDs document put forward for your consideration and endorsement therefore seeks to maintain the momentum of success by building upon and retaining existing strengths, whilst also recognising the journey to date and enhancing our approach to new areas of opportunity and action. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Councillor O'Prey, do you want to move?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Natoli, thank you. Would you open, Councillor O'Prey?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you. Firstly, I'd like to thank all the staff yet again. Of course, Greg Laverty and Grantley Switzer for what their work they've done in recent times. But I'd also like to acknowledge Andrew Eves-Brown and also in the earlier days, Paul Martins and even again in the earlier days, again, Mr. Craig Matheson, who may well be in the room today in the chambers, all have been integral parts of this REDS, and it's been a big part of the Sunshine Coast Council's development and the economy particularly over the last 10 years. I'd also like to thank Terry Landsberg, my portfolio co-holder, and also I'd like to say a quick thank you to Councillor Rick Babarowski for presenting the awards earlier this morning for the vitamin C campaigns. Mr. Mayor, we're very lucky, very lucky to have such exciting and enthusiastic and efficient staff to present and deliver the REDS. The REDS strategy has been around for over 10 years now, and it's something that's been a big part of my working life, my professional working life, but also my personal life. And I really want to thank the staff wholeheartedly for that. Some of the key changes that I'd like to highlight is particularly the 5 pathways. You'll see that, I think it's on, from memory, page 10, the 5 pathways, really nailing down the niche and emerging economies that are coming out of the Sunshine Coast. And of course, they're all linked to our 7 high-value industries. Mr. Mayor, the only other thing I'd really like to highlight in this report is we've got new words in this REDS, new words like pandemics, like artificial intelligence. Defence has actually made a start, and film, but probably most importantly, the Olympics. So these are new phrases, new terms, new things that we're thinking about moving forward into our next 10-year plan. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd particularly like to thank Anthony for the presentation today and put this to all councillors for their discussion and debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Prey. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to thank the staff. I mean, economic development in the past was never really the mantra of local government. It was always seen as other levels of government. And it's clearly shown that this strategy that we have here is working. The report card shows that we're punching way above our weight. I totally support the new direction and the refresh, but I just wanted to highlight the page that talks about the barriers. And the barriers for us are quite significant, because I've always felt the Sunshine Coast has had to do it alone in terms of being able to have the infrastructure and the support of other levels of government in terms of enabling our growing community to be able to function the way that I know it can. And I think Sunshine Coast can make an even bigger contribution to the Queensland and Australian economy if we had the assistance of other levels of government. And many of these barriers are really state and federal government related barriers that prevent us. Things like affordable housing and the diversity in housing, the traffic congestion that we're seeing on our roads at the moment. They're some of the most significant things. But then when you look at, you know, one of the other things that it shows that we don't have a convention and exhibition centre, one of the largest regional communities in Queensland that doesn't have that piece of infrastructure. And we can't compete. The LGAQ conference was only held last week. When I was elected in 1997, it was always a desire that one day here on the Sunshine Coast we could hold the LGAQ conference, and we can't. We don't have a facility big enough to be able to have that one conference. And so our community just keeps missing out. I really think that this document, this page here that highlights that, Mr. Mayor, would be an appropriate document, just like we did with the housing and homelessness paper that we sent it to the state government, that we could put together a very clear and articulated document about the barriers preventing the Sunshine Coast and being able to perform. Could imagine if we took some of these barriers away, how significant the opportunities would be here for our community here on the Sunshine Coast. So congratulations. As I said, you're punching way above your weight, showing that you're getting results, even though we've got these massive, significant barriers. I want to thank the staff for the work that they've done.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Babarowski.
Look, it's my privilege to present a small contribution to the debate from Councillor Landsberg, who says, from its inception in 2013, the REDS has provided our region with the solid strategies to build a broader base economy that continues to further develop and support the aspirations of our business community. With ambitious objectives of creating opportunities to become a more multi-layered and sustainable region, the RED strategy also provides the confidence for our businesses to grow and prosper by facilitating one of the fastest growing economies in Queensland, achieving a GRP of 21 billion over the last 5 years. The Sunshine Coast has a remarkable annual growth of 5.4%, considering that the state average is 2.4%. This high rate of growth reflects the importance of the strategy, which continues to achieve strategically targeted results in the tech industry, innovation, food and agribusiness, and professional services, as well as the more traditional sectors of construction, retail, and particularly tourism, which continues to be one of our major economic contributors, generating about 3.4 billion in visitor spending. But along with success, there are also new and emerging challenges. And our business community is well aware of the risks in globally volatile markets such as labour and supply chain shortages, increased cost of materials, products and services, new skills for our younger generation to be ready for the less predictable future, and developing a nighttime economy to support the lifestyle expectations of a new generation and of international visitors to our region. These challenges and others yet to fully emerge are expected as we continue to grow and strive to meet the targets set by the REDS refresh. Finally, my apologies, Councillor Landsberg's apologies for not being able to speak at this item because he's currently representing Council and the Sunshine Coast at the Intelligent Community Forum in New York, being nominated for the 4th year in a row as an intelligent community. And surely this further reflects the commitment this council has to building an economy based on high-value industries within this now refreshed REDS strategy. These increasing to local to global connections are a testament to all the hard work of our team at the Economic Development and who have achieved locally, regionally and internationally such good outcomes. Well done to all involved, from Councillor Terry Landsberg.
Thank you, Councillor Babrowski. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Just for Councillor O'Prea's benefit, I thought I'd just mention that Mr Andrew Eves-Brown is actually in the chamber today, so he would have heard your comments, Councillor O'Prea. The thing that I'd like to mention and add to the debate today is how pleased I am that the inclusion of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have been spread across all of the actions. There's sometimes a bit of a misperception that the biosphere, which uses those SDGs, is all about the blue and the green, the trees and the water. But that's not the case. And so having the SDGs embedded in the economic strategy has been really beneficial because our biosphere is reliant upon the whole community. So that's council, it's our general community, and it's also our business community. And we need all of the parties to come together to make sure that we can retain our status as a UNESCO Biosphere designation. Some of the examples of the SDGs that are aligned with the economic strategy is number 4, quality education, number 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, number 10, reduced inequalities, and number 12, responsible consumption and production. And I know you talked about the circular economy before, which kind of underpins that one. So I'm really pleased to see that that's embedded in our strategies going forward and that we will bring our business community along the ride as we progress our biosphere going forward. Because it's not only good for the community, it's not only good for the environment, it's good for business as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Babrowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, I just thought I'd rise to support what had been said. And I think Councillor Toley particularly highlighted that this wasn't traditionally a space for local councils. But I remember in 2013, in fact 2012, when we were really looking at this as a relatively new council, we were still feeling the effects of the GFC. And we absolutely knew that if we didn't diversify the economy of the Sunshine Coast, it would be hit hard by a future economic recession or depression. And we couldn't just simply rely on our 3 core industries at that time, which were retail, construction and tourism. We knew that we were going to have some significant investment in health, as we knew the hospital was coming, and education was a bit of a feature because of our university. But that was never going to be enough. And I think that what's testament to the refresh of the REDS is how solid the strategic framework has turned out to be. You know, in picking the 7 high-value industries, in making sure that we have now focused, I think, on the more contemporary ideas of the circular economy. I think that's a space that we can hopefully contribute to some leadership in. I also think that what we've learned along the way is that, yes, we needed to attract businesses to the Sunshine Coast, but I think as the refresh document shows, we're now going to lean much more into the businesses that are here and help them to become from small to medium to large, which I think is key. So I completely support the REDS refresh document, endorse what the council has said, and certainly will be supporting the report recommendations today.
Thank you, Councillor Babrowski. If there are no further speakers, I'll go back to Councillor O'Prey to close.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to all the councillors that have made contribution there this morning, and particular thanks to Councillor Joe for bringing up the assistance that from other levels of governments that sometimes are lacking, and the barriers. You know, we work very hard in this space and we do the best we can with what we got, and quite often it's said that we're batting well above our average. I'd also like to thank Councillor Suarez for acknowledging Andy Eves-Brown in the chamber. Thanks, mate. Thanks for all you've done. A wonderful, wonderful strategy that's been put together with a number of changes. You should be very proud of that work, and you're sadly missed, so thank you. Mr Mayor, I'd also like to say a very big thank you and congratulations to you personally, as our team captain, as our one that's most vocal on every occasion you possibly can in regard to the Reds. You've helped this to be driven, you've helped it to be successful, and you've helped the community get on board 100%. In fact, the community are on board more than 100%. They love this document and they'll be very excited to see its release. Councillors, I'm very proud of this strategy, and it's very clear. The REDS Regional Economic Development Strategy refresh for 2023, I put that forward to you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Prey. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, team. Well done, Anthony and team. Thanks, Jason. Okay, we're going to move to 8.3, which is the Sunshine Coast Community Strategy Annual Report for 22-23. And I invite Kerry Forrest to give us a presentation. Thanks, Kerry.
Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity this morning to present on the Sunshine Coast Community Strategy Annual Report for 2022-2023 for your consideration. The Sunshine Coast Community Strategy was adopted by Council in November 2019 and provides the long-term direction for how Council and the community will work together to advance our shared goal of achieving a strong community. We'll work together to ensure that people and places remain connected as we grow, and where we stay true to our values as a welcoming, caring and vibrant community with opportunities for all to participate. Our community told us that a strong community is healthy and active. It's vibrant, it's inclusive, it's connected and resilient, and it's creative and innovative. And these 5 areas provide the framework for the community strategy implementation. As we are now in the 5th and final year of delivering on the Community Strategy Action Plan, we are currently in the process of engaging with the community to undertake a review and a refresh of the community strategy and develop a new 5-year action plan to reflect the current priorities of our community. This is scheduled to be presented to Council next year. The Sunshine Coast Community Strategy Annual Report draws together a range of data, stories and insights to highlight and celebrate the valuable work that we have achieved over the past year to deliver on the community strategy priorities in partnership with our community. We also continue to measure and monitor our report on the progress towards developing our community outcomes by drawing upon both quantitative and qualitative measures. There's some great initiatives and community outcomes that have been achieved over the last year, and I'm proud to present the highlights of those to you today. I'd like to acknowledge the excellent work that's been undertaken by my community development team, as well as colleagues in sport and community venues, arts, heritage and libraries, the Brisbane 2032 team, Parks and Gardens and Sustainable Transport Services. Healthy Sunshine Coast was relaunched last November with a renewed focus on offering a more holistic range of health and wellbeing activities for all ages and abilities. We have over 3,000 people registered in this program, and there are 40 activities that occur across the region each week, which is fantastic. The Ride Score program, encouraging active and safe transport and travel to and from school, was run in 10 schools with over 1,800 students registered. In addition, the Bike Restoration program saw bikes from waste facilities and charities restored and given to these schools for children that were vulnerable and didn't have a bike. A successful Ride to School Day was held with 37 schools and 2,400 students participated. The growth in this program is really encouraging, and it reinforces the commitment that we are striving to be more active transport across our region. In preparation for the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games, councillors worked with the Sunshine Coast 2032 Legacy Reference Group to launch the 10+10+ Legacy Vision, outlining what the region is seeking to achieve as a key delivery partner. Last financial year saw more than 7.3 million visitors to our beaches. The lifeguard team had conducted 691 rescues and over 3,200 people received first aid. Councillors entered a new 5-year contract with Surf Life Saving Queensland, investing over $5 million in our lifeguard services. Volunteers continue to play an important role supporting the delivery of various programs and services, including beach cleanups, surf lifesaving and our library programs. 1,200 volunteers participated in Clean Up Australia Day this year, collecting 4.2 tonnes of rubbish and 1 tonne of recyclables. Our community facilities were activated and vibrant with a range of community events, activities and programs. Sunshine Coast Stadium hosted 46 major events and over 3,000 bookings, including 2 NRL pre-season games, 2 premiership games and Groove and the Moo, the festival attracting over 25,000 people. There was a 10% increase in visitation to our aquatic centres. Our Venue 114 hosted over 500 events and welcomed some major music artists, including Noiseworks. A further 2,700 bookings were undertaken in our other community managed venues. Our libraries continue to provide information services and lifelong learning programs, with over 830,000 visits in person and an increase in program participation. We've had a number of new facilities built. An example of that is the Nambour Splash Park, which has provided a really family-friendly venue, lots of fun for people of all ages and abilities. Upgrades to a number of other facilities are included in the report. The Kings Beach Park and Community Precinct became only the 4th Queensland park that has been recognised as an International Green Flag Award for a well-managed space. And the award-winning mobility maps were launched, allowing users of all abilities to make informed decisions, pre-planning their trips. So in 2023, the Sunshine Coast has been the most mapped local government area in Australia. And we now have maps covering Maroochydore, Mooloolaba, Caloundra, Nambour and Maleny. We've successfully launched the Shine a Light on Racism campaign, calling on the Sunshine Coast community to do the work in responding to racism and actively learning how to become an ally. The campaign was spearheaded by 7 local patrons, It was recognised by the Queensland Human Rights Commission and also awarded a Silver Government Design Award. We've undertaken progressive action to implement our Innovate RAP to further embed reconciliation commitments. In May, Council committed to participate in the Welcoming Cities Network to strengthen our commitment to cultural diversity and inclusion. Homelessness, it's arguably one of the most pressing social challenges facing the Sunshine community and will continue to be. We're exploring and reimagining new ways of responding to homelessness. Community Development has developed an innovative pilot lived experience program, listening to people's voices of those experiencing homelessness and empowering them to be able to share their stories safely. So they're providing advice and input into council. And I'm pleased to report one of those participants has now secured housing, and another of those participants co-presented at the Queensland Community Development Conference with our staff last week and acknowledged that being involved in the program has given him purpose, he feels connected, and that his life is now worthwhile. So that's gold to me. The team has facilitated and supported community-led initiatives such as the Hope for Homes Forum. With Q Shelter, we've co-designed homelessness awareness training and delivered that to 40 frontline staff to raise awareness of those experiencing homelessness, its causes and its impacts. Community Development are also working actively with customer response to trial new approaches to work with people sleeping rough in hotspot areas to achieve more sustainable and dignified outcomes. And we've worked with Customer and Planning Services Group to develop the Housing and Homelessness Action Plan. Continuing to put people with lived experience at the heart of our work, we've developed a draft All Abilities Action Plan towards a more inclusive Sunshine Coast for people with a disability. That's been based on targeted engagement with people with a lived experience of disability, their carers and support workers, and that will be presented to Council for endorsement at the next OM. We have partnered with local and domestic and family violence services for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and Domestic and Family Violence Prevention Month in May. Community members stood together at the Empower Her Voice March and candlelight visual held at Cotton Tree. The Community Grants Program has enabled and empowered community organisations to respond to community-identified needs and opportunities aligned with Council's key priority areas. For 22-23, $5 million was awarded through 1,043 grants for various programs, activities, partnerships and events. 40 new programs were launched on Council's Have Your Say online community engagement platform. We've continued to work to embed best practice community engagement with the development of an inclusive engagement guideline. Council has been recognised for our journey to excellence in engagement, winning the highly commended Organisation of the Year award at the IAP2 Australasia Awards. Our Think Change Travel Behaviour program has commenced with a number of pilot projects, including supporting staff here at City Hall to choose more sustainable travel options, and an 18-month trial of 400 e-scooters and 75 e-bikes has commenced in June in Mooloolaba and Maroochydore. The 2022 Caloundra Music Festival won the People's Choice Award for Festival of the Year at the 2023 Queensland Music Awards. It showcased 70 artists, including 30 local acts, and injected $3 million into the local economy. The 10-day Horizon Festival injected $1.7 million in economic benefit, with over 21,400 attendances across 127 events. So there was a number of genres included in this festival, including music, visual arts, dance, family entertainment, comedy, and also a strong First Nations program. A range of creative and cultural events and programs have been delivered, including the 10-week Refinery 501 program, supported by 20 artists and creative practitioners. There's also been the Project 24 Artists in Residency program held in Nambour to support established and emerging artists. And finally, there's been a number of signature programs delivered as part of the National Trust's Australian Heritage Festival at Bangford House and Landsborough Museum. The Landsborough Museum Street Festival celebrated 50th anniversary of the Landsborough and District Historical Society, relaunching the museum with new exhibitions and improved visitor experience. So as you can see, there's a lot been achieved over the last 12 months, and the Community Strategy Annual Report is now presented for your consideration.
Thank you, Kerry. So I've got the report being moved by Councillor Law. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Christian Dixon, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Law?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, and to Kerry, your team and councillors, CEO. What an incredible year the community development team have provided for the Sunshine Coast. It's structured and framed around the community strategy. And that strategy was developed and endorsed by council, the previous council, to be implemented by this council from 2020 onwards. Little was known of what we would have to overcome in the intervening 3 years, and how positive to hear what you've shared with us today, Kerry, on having come through that and arrived in 2022-23, the work that you've had to do with your team to create and do everything that we can for our community. Our community is about the people and place. I often focus on the people because places aren't really much at all without the people to be there and to create communities. And the action plan and the work of your team has given our community the best opportunity to thrive and move forward as we face the challenges that are there. A very fast and rapidly growing population, extreme weather events of every kind, within 12 months from major bushfires to incredible flooding that we hadn't seen in perhaps 10 or 15 years or more. And in amongst that, a whole global economy, but a local economy where we are all struggling with the cost of living pressures that are coming to bear on everyone. So in amongst that setting, to be able to do what you do for our community is quite remarkable. And you've captured everything that I can think of, but there's one point and one item that I really want to emphasise. Throughout all of the programs that you've described, you've been able to identify and highlight how vital it is to engage with the people who are living their lives to inform what we do and how we respond to best help them. And it's happened not only in people who are living with homelessness and the people who we've engaged with and we've sat down with to understand what are the things that will make a difference in their daily lives that are often incredibly small, simple things, but we would perhaps overlook if we didn't stop and listen to what they had to say and how we can best help them. We did the same with the inclusion action plan for people with a disability. We didn't write a plan and say, here you go, what do you think? We got in the room, we sat down with people who have a disability and have a lived disability, or their families, their parents, their carers, their loved ones, the service providers who deliver services on behalf of our community. And we worked out together what should be in that action plan. And when we come to look at that later this year, you will find that it is an action plan that is focused on delivering genuine, practical, meaningful outcomes for people who have a disability, because they were involved in creating and delivering it. The voice of the people who have the lived experience has been engaged with in detail, with compassion, with kindness, to create excellent results and outcomes for people in our community, whether they are what we've heard previously around people involved in driving the economy, where we sat down and listened to the business leaders and created their action plans and their strategies. We sit down with our community. No matter what part of the community they come from, to create and make a difference. And for me, that has really come through in everything you've shared with us today. We also held the Stronger Together Forum, and over 100 people from our community came together to look at the action plan that has been implemented since the strategy was implemented that needs to be renewed next year in 2024. And those 100 people, and then the surveys that happened around that, will again go to focus on what are the most important things for our community in the next 5 years. And that will shape and guide what the next council will do to support and work with our community. And I know that your team, Kerry, and through you, Mr. Mayor, the CEO, and everyone involved, because the community is every section of council. We have a community development team, but without our people and our community, we have nothing. So thank you for everything you do. And I'm going to finishing by focusing on work that was done last year that the community development team were extremely involved with, and that was the Housing and Homelessness Action Plan.
Just before you start, Councillor, can I get you an extension?
Thank you.
Someone move. Councillor Dixon, seconded Councillor Johnson. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Is Councillor O'Prey still with us? No. Okay. Thank you. Carry
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't be long. So the Housing and Homelessness Action Plan was developed in the life of the report that we've just heard about and was actually endorsed just in July, so a couple of weeks after the end of the year. But I think it's really important for us to all remember how important the community viewed that plan, that it received our unanimous support, for which, on behalf of the community, I'm extremely grateful to all of you for doing. And that will give us our direction and our guidance on how we can work with the other levels of government and work with our whole community to help our community address what I believe is the most pressing issue for people who are living at risk of homelessness, are homeless, or simply are living under such stress and duress because they're just trying to keep a roof over their head and feed themselves, or their children, or their parents and grandparents. It is a huge, complex issue, and that plan will guide us and lead us to actually deliver on some of the things that we really need to do. So to Kerry and your team, it's a pleasure and honour to work with you. You're incredible, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that was fantastic. I thought Councillor Law did a very good overview. And, you know, councils oftenly are criticised for things, you know, traffic, parking, local laws, development. But this is something you can actually be proud of. It's tangible, it's real, because it actually affects the people. And Councillor Law made a comment that places and towns are nothing without the people. And it was an interesting stat in the report that, I think I've got it here, just reading through the notes, it might have been something like 87% of people felt that they could ask for help. They needed help from their neighbours or friends or people in their community. And I think that's a pretty great statistic, that you feel if you need support in your community, you can ask for it. And there's one thing I've seen in generations past where, you know, it's the Australian thing. The Australian thing is to reach out and offer support and be a good friend and good neighbour. And I just really hope we can hold on to that as a community. There's a lot of things that have happened, but I want to talk about the ones that I've been a part of, because that's really, for me, where the rubber hits the road. We saw the Budrum Village Park Stage 9 delivered, and we had state government representatives, the Mayor, Councillor Ted Hungerford. This park is in Division 7 now, but Councillor Ted and I worked really hard many councils ago to purchase the land and actually see a district park in Budrum delivered, and it's now completed, and what a sensational asset for the Sunshine Coast community. The Sippy Downs Forest Park has been completed now. We've now got a forest park in the urban town centre at Sippy Downs. An enormous program and project that we worked on for many years, but delivered with support from our council staff. A great one I was involved with is the Ride Score program, and I'm not sure if too many people have been to those, but it's really awesome. I saw in the stat that we had 1,800 registrations, over 10 schools involved, but we talk about traffic, we talk about congestion, and to combat that, people need to get out of cars. And we have this program where children are riding to school, and they're they're being taught bike skills, learning how to ride, safety around roads. We actually took it a step further, and there was a maintenance project where our resource recovery centres and charities were donating bikes that could be reconditioned, and the young people were working on those bikes at school. So they're actually fixing them up, learning an essential skill, and donating those back to the less fortunate who couldn't afford bicycles to ride to school. So again, that's where the rubber hits the road. A great one for me was attending the domestic violence vigil. I think that was in May, and I was blown away at the feedback from the community. And I hung around the back a bit just listening to people, and it was really great to see. There was a lot of support, and without going into too much, I was so proud of Maria Suarez for speaking at that event. She had me in tears a bit. Lucky it was dark and I was hiding away a bit, but it was just good to hear real stories about people you care about. It really drives the message home. And just lastly, the homelessness issue. You know, it is getting worse. I just last week reported a tent that's been set up between the Sunshine Motorway and Prelude Drive at Mountain Creek. Someone's living in a blue tent that's been set up right in the middle of the motorway, and we've reported that. But just unbelievable. You know what traffic and congestion and the safety issues are around there, and someone's living in a tent. It's just right in your face. So we have got an issue, and there's many people that can work with us on that. You know, the state government has a large responsibility. I've talked about some good things. There's one thing in the report that stands out to me, and I'm not going to point the finger because pointing the finger is not going to help us fix the problem. But I did note with interest that safety, people feeling safe in the community has dropped by 10%. It's down from 72% to 62%. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that go into that. Housing stress, mortgage stress, lack of police resources, COVID. I know that there's a lot going on in people's minds. Domestic violence, there's a lot going on. But it is definitely something that we should be aware of. To see the community say 10% they've dropped their level of feeling safe in the community, that really hits home with me. Because I know as someone that's grown up on the Sunshine Coast, I actually feel relatively safe. I feel safe out and about. And I know I've got some entitlement as a male. I realise that. I realise that some people aren't as safe as what I might be. It just really hits home that I think we need to be doing a bit more in that space, just to understand and unpack that. But all in all, pretty good report card for council. And again, proud to stand here today and celebrate this with council. And again, congratulations to Councillor Law. I think he needs to take a bit of credit for his involvement because he's been a fantastic portfolio champion. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I thought I'd again rise to support this annual report. One, because I think we all appreciate just how valuable the annual reports are in letting the community understand, well, how do we go? How do we spend your rate dollars? And it gives everybody an opportunity to feel confident or different in the projects and programs that council delivers. And I wanted to point out a couple with my portfolio hat on, which sits under the umbrella of the community portfolio for transport, because I think not many councils would take on a program like Think Change. That's really tough to make sense of people's travel behaviour and try to get them to think about why they get from A to B in whatever mode they do. And on the Sunshine Coast, we all know that it's essentially in a car. Remind ourselves that we really are pretty much the second, if not the most, highest number of cars per household in Australia. We've designed a program called Think Change. It's a 5-year gig. This report's on the first year where we implement the design of that program to focus on workplaces, events, and specific elements of the community. And as you heard, it highlighted the fact that we focused on City Hall with 800 employees in it. How do you get here? Have you thought about it? Could you do it differently? And obviously, we also like to think that they might take some advantage of the trial with the e-scooters and e-bikes, also in Maroochydore. That is so essential because we all understand that without the physical infrastructure of another network, some sort of rail technologies, the road network will fail. It is failing in on certain routes and intersections, but it will fail dramatically as we increase our population without the state and federal funding investing in really what is going to be billions. But the think change is our way of saying, while we wait for that, while we're involved in the planning and while we're advocating for that, we will do what we can as a community to think about how we move. The other one in my other portfolio with the heritage is the relaunch of the Landsborough Museum. I'm so proud of this council that we worked so closely with the volunteers who had run the museum for 40 years, but it really, really struggled with all of the overheads of managing a very large collection and the facilities and trying to make that work in a modern, highly regulated world. They negotiated with our staff who, and this council agreed to take over the operations and the collection, and we've relaunched that museum in Landsborough, and I think we've done a very good job of positioning it to tell the social history of this region to this region. It's got a long way to go. There's a lot of problems with the buildings that we've got to fix, and then we can move on to even better programming. But we have made a fantastic start, and I'd like to thank all the staff for their efforts in that one too. So absolutely support the report. Congratulate Councillor Law again and the other councillors for pointing out that we do take the community really as the reason why we exist. There is no difference, in my view, between the council and the community. We are the community, we represent the community. And I really find it weird that sometimes people talk about the council and try to dehumanise it as something separate. It isn't. There isn't a person in here that isn't absolutely connected to their community and wants to do the best for it. And this report demonstrates that in spades. Has my support.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, this morning we're talking about a number of different strategies. Obviously, we spoke about the Regional Economic Development Strategy just before this item, the Community Strategy, which Ms Forrest sort of gave a great presentation on. And coming up next, we've got our Environment and Liveability Strategy. And as has already been mentioned, community is at the heart of council. That's, once again, as Councillor Babarowski has said, that's why council exists, is for our community. So it's great to see the highlights, and I was a bit worried, Ms Forrest, at one stage I thought you might pass out because you were talking so much about the highlights. I wanted you to take a breath, and I know that you probably could have kept talking about the highlights, but it was a really great reflection of what council has been doing on behalf of our community in the last 12 months. I also just want to take the opportunity to thank, from the group executive level, Mr Laverty, who's obviously not here today, but Mr Switzer has been acting in that role for several months now. Obviously, Ms Forrest and the team, and I did see Chantel sitting up there before, so could you please go back to all your respective staff and please thank them on behalf of council for the outstanding work that they do on behalf of our community. One of the things that I just wanted to quickly touch on is the mobility mapping. That was a really integral part of the draft inclusion plan, which will obviously come to council in the future. But for us as a council, we really need to understand where the issues are in our community for those people with disabilities when they move about. We don't want to see them, trapped at home because footpath isn't in place, or a hazard or barrier is there. So I know Councillor Law and the Mayor have been pretty active in that space, but I just wanted to say that our Sunshine Coast region is a real leader amongst Australian, the local government areas in Australia, and we're right at the top there, and I don't want to see us take our focus away from that. So and just probably one last thing, I just wanted to acknowledge Councillor Law for being a real champion of this particular strategy, and of course Councillor Babarowski. I think it's incredible the skill sets that you've brought in this term, in this space. I think it's really good, and I just want you to keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. If there are no further speakers, I'll go back to Councillor Law to close.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. To my colleagues, thank you for your positive feedback and endorsement of everything we're doing in this space. From my point of view, it's how I turn up each day to make a difference for our community, and nothing will stop me from doing that, be assured, Peter. But to all of you, thank you. A strong community takes everyone. A strong community will help us thrive together. But it's about all of us working together, not just in this room, not just within the council, Mr Mayor, but our whole community needs to come together, work together, so that we all feel safe every day, so that we all can achieve the quality of life and our ambitions as we move forward to hopefully a future where people aren't sleeping rough, where everyone does have enough to put a meal on the table for their families, and at the same time where we can work with the economic powerhouse and engine rooms that are developing and building our economy so that people have got somewhere to go to work, so that they can put a meal on the table and have somewhere to live. Everything in this strategy and in this plan and the report fits together to make the Sunshine Coast the incredible place that it is. But it's our role to highlight the vulnerable areas and to make sure that we leave no one behind. So I think we're going to get some support for this today, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Law. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks very much, Kerry, for the presentation. We'll move to 8.4, which is the Sunshine Coast Environment and Liveability Strategy Annual Report 22-23, and welcome Dave Moore and Gillian Smith for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, councillors. The purpose of this report today is to present the annual report for your Environment and Liveability Strategy for 22-23. Adopted in 2017, 22-23 represents the 6th year of the strategy's implementation, which continues to provide the long-term strategic directions to guide growth, environmental protection and shape the region for future generations. These directions focus on the preservation and enhancement of the natural environment and the livability of the region, enabling a good quality of life for all residents and supporting a strong economy in an accessible and well-connected built environment. Through implementation, the strategy continues to support the transformational change required to deliver a healthy environment and a livable Sunshine Coast in 2041. As we collectively respond to the challenges and opportunities associated with population change, climate change, a growing economy, as well as technology. The graphically designed annual report highlights some of the collective achievements that have been delivered in 22-23, which include the opening of the City Hall, which was designed with sustainability at its core and includes features that will reduce environmental impact and embrace the Sunshine Coast climate. The establishment of the Sippy Downs Forest Park and playground upgrades at Buderim, Nambour, Beerwah and Sippy Downs. Ongoing partnerships with our community to build a healthy environment and a sustainable Sunshine Coast through a range of different projects and initiatives, including our Kids in Action program, which this year focused around catchment connections, mountains to sea. Council's adoption of their organisational zero net emissions plan to provide a roadmap on how Council is to meet the target of a zero net emissions organisation by 2041, and expansion of our residential waste collection services to include garden organics as part of our efforts to reduce emissions associated with our waste. An important component of these strategic directions is the annual performance measures, which are a key component to assist us to monitor and track our progress and to ensure the effectiveness of the implementation. Our progress includes that we continue to advocate for the protection of our regional interurban break. While there was no environment levy land acquisitions finalised in 22-23, we're still, our measure was still above our baseline that's been set. For sport and recreation land, we secured approximately 12 hectares through development contributions, a 64 megawatt increase in renewable energy capacity, and the majority of this energy capacity is contributed by community solar, demonstrating our community's ongoing commitment to a sustainable Sunshine Coast. And our greenhouse gas emissions were reduced, and I'll talk about that in a little more now. So as part of this ELS annual report, it provides a snapshot into Council's environmental sustainability performance. Our organisational greenhouse gas emissions and key environmental sustainability performance forms part of our broader corporate plan reporting as well. Benchmarking allows Council to track its sustainability performance over time and enables us to identify and prioritise areas where we can be more efficient, improve on financial sustainability and broader environmental outcomes. Some of the results include, for 22-23, Council's organisational emissions decreased by approximately 20% to 176,000 tonnes, a decrease of around 45,000 tonnes from last financial year and equating to being 25.5% ahead of our emissions target for this financial year. Waste, emissions from waste represent 75.1% of our footprint. These did decrease by approximately 38,000 tonnes or 22.2% compared to the 21-22 financial year. This decrease was due to a reduction of waste to landfill compared to the previous year and the expansion of landfill gas capture infrastructure at the Nambour landfill site. The significant decrease in waste quantities to landfill compared to previous financial year was in relation to the February 22 flooding, an event during which Council saw an increased waste to landfill from our community. However, when considering the longer term trend from 2021, waste quantities have increased overall. And as a growing region, waste quantities to landfill are forecasted to increase, which in turn affects Council's organisational emissions footprint negatively. Focused action on waste diversion and circular economy economy projects will prove effective as part of our approach to mitigating this change. In terms of electricity, the highest emissions reduction by proportion was from electricity emissions. This decrease can be attributed to one of Council's electricity providers being formally verified to supply Council with net zero emissions electricity and aligning with our climate active standard for emissions reporting. Council can reflect this verification in our own emissions footprint. In terms of renewables, in 22-23, there was 11 kilowatts of new solar installed on Council assets, and this represents an installation of a system at the Eumundi District Sports Park. Currently, we have a total of 54 solar systems on Council rooftops, and plans are underway to install further infrastructure in the coming financial year. 2 batteries were installed at holiday parks, and these batteries are part of a trial to test the application of this technology in combination with our solar assets. Councillors, when we prepare this report, it's critical the data that sits behind it, the type, the quantity, the availability and access to it. And since first commencing our sustainability reporting, steps have continued being taken to improve data collection and reporting to improve efficiencies and also our decision making. In this regard, I'd like to acknowledge Rolf Engel, who's part of our team. Sitting behind this, there is a lot of spreadsheets, bills, etc. And Rolf has taken a lead to connect across the organisation to allow us to present information in an easy, accessible way, not only just for this year, but looking at what we've achieved over previous years, where we're up to, what else we need to do. And I think as an organisation, this isn't just for environment livability, but it's right across the organisation, you know, in our different parts, whether that's in fleet or procurement. What data do we collect? What data could we collect? And how can this data be used to contribute to our organisational decision making and steps towards a sustainable Sunshine Coast? So councillors, it's recommended that you support the Environment Livability Strategy Annual Report for 22-23. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Councillor Suarez to move. Councillor Cox to second. Would you like to open, please, Councillor Suarez?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Dr Dave, for the report. I know we've got a lot on the agenda today, so I'm not going to go through all of the highlights which are outlined in the report, but I don't want to undervalue the work that's been done as well. It has been amazing, the work that the team have done, and I want to acknowledge that we have Gillian and Ingrid here, and thank you, Rolf, for doing all the background work. The annual collection of data to put this report together is really vital for us to progress the ELS, Environment and Livability Strategy initiatives for the long term. And we have a look at one of the graphs in there, and we can celebrate our wins, not only with the awards we might have won. I think the wins that we get internally in terms of achieving the goals we want to set for ourselves is more important. We've had an increase in our land holdings for conservation purposes. We've had a reduction in our carbon emissions. And I know we've had that conversation that those results, while they're incredible this year, may fluctuate over the following years. But that will help us to focus on where we can put our energy into trying to reduce those emissions in the long term. Is it waste? We know that that's yes. Our fleet, other areas that we can look at. We've had that increased renewable energy capacity, and we've also retained our extent of the regional interurban break, which is fantastic. But also mindful of the challenge we have with working with our desire to have 5 hectares per 1,000 people for sport and recreation. With our increasing population and the limits that we have in terms of available, suitable land for sport and recreation, it's really putting a lot of pressure on our communities. And so having reports like this, it gives us the impetus to have a look at, drive that a little bit more, or have a look at other ways we might be able to deliver upon that. So I just really wanted to thank you guys for the work you've done. Thank you for the annual report, because that gives us guidance on what we need to do going forward. And I really like in the report that you actually include areas that we will be focusing on in the year ahead. So thank you for that, and I look for support from my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Cox.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I'll certainly be supporting it as one of the portfolio holders, along with Councillor Suarez. Reading through the annual report and obviously noting a lot of the highlights and the annual performance measures that have been listed, but the couple that stand out for me are the regional interurban break and no net loss of that. Obviously, we've maintained that. For me, that is one of the biggest challenges our Sunshine Coast region faces as we move forward over the coming decades. We've got population challenges. We have got a state government that potentially sees that as accommodating, new communities. But that regional interurban break is one of the key preservation sites that we need to ensure as a council on behalf of our community moving forward. So I'm great that that's taking an elevated focus within this report here today. The other thing I wanted to touch on, and Councillor Suarez also mentioned it, was the renewable energy capacity, and that's increased by 64 megawatts. Now, when you consider that this council was the first council or local government in Australia to develop and own its own solar farm, it's 15 megawatts. So when we look at the increase in that community renewable energy space of 64 megawatts, that's virtually 4 times the size of what our solar farm is. That's a significant contribution here to the Sunshine Coast. So it really demonstrates that our community is bought into the vision of being Australia's most sustainable region. So that is a really great acknowledgement and reinforces the great work that obviously yourself and the team are already doing. I probably won't talk too much about it. Obviously the environment is one side, and we've obviously had some measures there about how we're tracking there. The liveability is the other part of the strategy, and the liveability of the Sunshine Coast I know is a key focus of our council. Obviously there are significant challenges with dealing and finding that balance with the population growth, but I believe that we are doing the best that we suitably can, and I just encourage all my fellow councillors to support this here today.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Babarowski.
Look, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to endorse everything Councillor Cox and Councillor Suarez said. I think this area of council investment programming projects is intrinsic to our identity. It's intrinsic to our values. So I think the community really appreciate getting these annual reports where we literally do, again, explain what we've done. One of the things I thought was, the reason I'd stand is that I thought it was a very strategically important moment in the expansion of the curbside garden organics bins. and how well our community received that. That was quite a cultural challenge to some extent. Lots and lots of people, to some extent, may have thought that was a bit of an imposition. But I think it showed great maturity on behalf of this community in understanding that, look, we're on a journey towards food organics, not just garden organics. I think very sensibly we just rolled out the garden organics because we knew how to cope with that and how to process it and what we needed to do to scale up. Food organics is far more challenging, and I think we're yet to find our solution to that. And that may require us to act in partnership or collaboration with others as well. But that was a very, I think, important strategic initiative that, again, the Sunshine Coast stepped into ahead of most. So I'd like to congratulate, again, the team in the planning, in the distribution, and in the rollout of that particular expansion of the garden organics curbside collection service, and I'll certainly be supporting the recommendations today.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. If there are no further speakers, I'll go back to Councillor Suarez. No need to close. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 8.5 is a update or a refresh on the environment and livability strategy going forward. So back to you, Dr. Dave.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And again, thanks, councillors, for this opportunity to present this report, which is a refresh of our environment and livability strategy, in particular Part A and Part B. Council's operational plan includes an activity to undertake a review of the strategy's implementation plan. But as part of this activity, it's been broadened to also include a refresh of Part A, which is the strategic directions. The intent of the refresh is to incorporate new information, 6 years on since it was adopted, fill any gaps in our policy setting, and strengthen the strategic directions provided by the ELS to ensure our strategic directions retain their relevance and continue to offer a contemporary approach. A review and update of Part C, the third part of the strategy, is planned, and timing is aligned to other statutory processes, including the development of a new Sunshine Coast planning scheme and the development of a new local government infrastructure plan. And it's anticipated that this will be completed towards the end of 2024. So our environment livability strategy continues to provide us with those long-term strategic directions to respond to growth and deliver that transformational change required for a healthy environment, and as we've spoken about just now, the livability of the Sunshine Coast. It's an approach that does focus on the preservation and enhancement of our natural environment, enabling a good quality of life for all residents and supporting a strong economy in an accessible and well-connected built environment. Since being adopted in 2017, the award-winning strategy has delivered multiple environment livability outcomes for our region. And these outcomes are delivered by multiple stakeholders across the organisation, whether that's in a policy setting, whether it's an on-ground operational setting. There are so many different contributions that are being delivered both within the organisation and from our community as well as part of the outcomes we're looking to achieve. But some of these include international recognition of our local government area as the United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organisations Biosphere Reserve, expanding our green spaces, including new environment reserve acquisitions and recreation parks, Blue Heart Sunshine Coast on the Maroochydore floodplain, ongoing advocacy for the protection of the regional and urban break, new community facilities to ensure we have great places and spaces, including the Baringa Community Centre, proactive planning for the expected impacts of climate change, and new plans and strategies, including the Stormwater Management Strategy, Recreation Parks Plan, and the Sunshine Coast Design Book. Monitoring and tracking our implementation progress is critical to ensure the effectiveness of the strategy. A number of targets and supporting indicators have been prepared to enable regular and meaningful reporting. This includes the outcome indicators aligned to strategic pathways, which we've just spoken about in our annual report, which we do each year. The strategy also includes long-term theme-based targets that enable us to monitor the progress of achieving the theme outcomes and collectively contributing to the strategy's vision. These targets are reported on that 3 to 5 year basis, and as part of the refresh, a report has been prepared which collectively summarises these for the first time. To inform the refreshed environment livability strategy, feedback was collated through a number of different processes, including an independent review, previous community engagement activities, some further community engagement, as well as internal stakeholder input. And from a community perspective, they've continued to be engaged and consulted on various council matters that relate to our environment livability. For this refresh project, 2 stages of community engagement were undertaken, one in May and the other one in July, August, with over 400 contributions being made through workshops, surveys, online webinars and formal submissions. In phase 1, we sought to understand what emerging issues there are for the Sunshine Coast and what are the priority actions required to deliver on our healthy environment, livable Sunshine Coast. In phase 2, we sought to understand community support for the proposed changes of the strategic directions and the transformational actions and tasks that were proposed. The independent review reported that the strategy continues to provide a contemporary and relevant approach, and in many ways leads local governments around Australia in its approach to truly integrate sustainability across council's planning and service delivery. Many of the emerging issues raised during engagement are already reflected within the existing strategic directions, but these have been further addressed and strengthened where we can. What the community told us in 2017 about the environment livability strategy, including retaining the distinct character, protecting natural assets, finding the balance, being sustainable, and ongoing community involvement were reaffirmed through this ELS refresh engagement. Furthermore, the community acknowledged that as we continue to plan for an increasing population, it's important that we ensure the quality of our life here on the Sunshine Coast remains a priority. This will require ongoing focus on responding to climate change, access to affordable living options, communities that are well serviced by appropriate infrastructure such as public and active transport networks, and greening our neighbourhoods. Prioritisation and monitoring and evaluation of the strategy's implementation continued to be common feedback in both internal and external conversations. With our strategic ambitions, this is not just an environment livability strategy matter, but rather feeds into the ongoing work that we are doing for the Sunshine Coast, and whether that be short-term, and how we deliver the outcomes with the cost of delivery, medium terms in terms of how we prepare the Sunshine Coast to host the Olympic and Paralympic Games, and longer term in relation to climate change. And these are all drivers of what we are faced with and how we best work together. In responding to all the feedback that was provided, the refreshed ELS continues to retain the same structure. Part A, strategic directions, Part B, implementation plan, and Part C, the network plan, which will be the next thing that we have to address. So in terms of the changes, there's 11 things that you can see up on the screen there. This is what we heard and what we have responded to as part of the refresh. So recognition of our international UNESCO Sunshine Coast Biosphere Reserve status has been reflected to demonstrate Council's commitment to creating a positive legacy for future generations. We've recognised the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and aligned these to the relevant themes. Opportunities have been taken to strengthen the integration between our regional strategies, including drives of change and the contributions being made to our environment livability through the collective implementation of our strategic directions. Wording has been incorporated into the refresh strategy to recognise the state of climate emergency and the increased urgency and sustained effort required across the next 10 years to reduce emissions and to build organisational and community adaptive capacity and resilience into our environment, community and economy. Wording has been incorporated to recognise the global biodiversity loss, as well as Council's and the community's ongoing local efforts to deliver on the protection and enhancement of our valued natural environment. Dark skies planning has been recognised with the inclusion of a new policy position in the landscape and character theme. Our waste strategic directions have been strengthened by incorporating new waste management policy positions under the energy and resources theme, and a new transformational action in Part B, getting waste sorted. The refresh strategy has strengthened language to continue to recognise the important role our built form plays in a sustainable Sunshine Coast, and in particular as it relates to greening of our neighbourhoods, community connectedness, affordable housing and livability, active transport and mobility, accessibility for all, and community health and wellbeing. We've strengthened the recognition of the community's role in implementing the strategy, and in particular a new transformational action called Celebrating People and Nature. This aims to support, enable and inspire the community to value the environment and play their part as we all live, learn, work and play sustainably in our biosphere. The refreshed strategy has incorporated a new guiding principle, respect, respecting and embracing our diverse community. We acknowledge our yesterday, celebrate our today and collectively build towards our tomorrow. And a part of that is our ongoing partnerships with our First Nations communities. We've updated statistics and facts as well. In terms of Part B, the refresh strategy has aligned council services to the relevant themes within the strategy, just to recognise the huge range of services that are being delivered, and just because it's not a transformational action does not mean that it's not contributing to our environment livability. There has been a reduction in the number of transformational actions from 26 to 18 to help with us in our prioritisation, but this does not reduce any of the important areas we need to address. And the tasks associated with these have also been adjusted. So, councillors, it is recommended that you adopt your refreshed environment livability strategy for the 2023 edition. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Moved by Councillor Cox, second by Councillor Suarez. You like to open, Councillor Cox?
Yeah. Thanks for the presentation, Dr. Dave. Clearly, we've heard that since the 2017 Environment and Livability Strategy, there's been a lot of work done and a lot of changes. So we needed to make sure that in this refresh they were brought in, and you've touched on them through your presentation, but things like the biosphere designation, the dark skies, our climate emergency, and obviously the 2032 Olympics and Paralympics. So we've had to obviously go through a significant sort of update of that 2017 plan. And as part of this strategy refresh, we've consulted with community groups right across the region, as well as the local community through our Have Your Say website. I'm just going to put these back on. We received more than 400 contributions through various workshops, surveys, online webinars and formal submissions during the two-stage consultation process between May and August. And I'd just like to thank everyone who engaged and told us what they perceived to be those emerging issues and challenges and opportunities for our region, and obviously what our priority actions should be, or simply gave feedback on the draft changes. It's clear to me that the community reaffirmed the strategy key values of retaining the distinct character, protecting those natural assets that we value so much and finding the balance, being sustainable, our commitment to our ongoing community involvement. We also heard that as we continue to plan for that projected population growth that I mentioned previously, it's important to ensure our quality of life remains a priority. And for me, that's the crucial livability element of this strategy. It's also important to retain the focus on our response to climate change, providing those affordable living options, ensuring those communities are well serviced with that appropriate infrastructure like public and active transport, as well as continuing to green our neighbourhoods with more shade trees. But it's no good just saying those things unless we undertake that serious monitoring and tracking as the strategy's implementation, progress and effectiveness. And that's critical to obviously this strategy's success. And it certainly appears in what I've seen so far, and obviously the previous item, that we're actually following through on this. So councillors, I know that we're seeking to refresh this here, Part A and Part B, and Part C will be coming to us later next year. So with that, I'd like to seek your endorsement and look forward to your support.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to add to what Councillor Cox has spoken to the report just now. it's a good strategy. It always was a good strategy. Let's face it, you know, but we've made it better. We've listened to the community. We've added in things that have changed on the ground and over the last few years to make it even better. But realistically, a lot of the initiatives that have come out of the ELS strategy are an exemplar to other councils. And we're happy to share that knowledge because in isolation, Sunshine Coast Council can't make a difference because a lot of these initiatives, you know, spread globally. And a couple of those, one of those, Blue Heart, just very proud of that project, so I thought I'd give that one a plug. That has received a lot of recognition from not only the state government, the federal government, from other councils as well, and industry bodies. And I may embarrass Councillor Cox a little bit as well when I mention the Coastal Health Report. I know Councillor Cox presented in Perth at the Coastal Councils Forum, and he did share with me that he felt like a bit of a rock star because as he was walking around, people were coming up to him saying, "Are you from Sunshine Coast Council? You guys are doing really great things." And that is a real reflection on the work that the team are doing. So thank you for making Councillor Cox look good. One of the other things that I thought I'd just throw in there as well is one of the 11 changes that we've got in here is the recognition, you know, that we're in a state of climate emergency. In responding to that, we have to make hard decisions, sometimes expensive decisions, sometimes disruptive decisions. And I just want the community to be aware that when we are making those decisions in response to the climate emergency, they're for the long-term benefit of the community. It's not for today, it's not for tomorrow, it's for the long-term benefit of the community. So I just wanted to highlight that one as well and just say thank you to the team. I'm really proud to be a portfolio councillor under ELS. I think it's a great one to be with, and I look forward to your continued success with this strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I generally don't like to use the word awesome because I think it's massively overused and generally devalued. But if you look at the detail and the quality of the research in this report, it genuinely is awesome. It's not fluff. It's got incredible quality to it and gives anyone who wants to pay the attention to it a really good insight into where this region sits in terms of our environment and livability, where we want to go. There are a couple of things that I wanted to point out. One, I thought our renewed focus on access to affordable living options was so crucial and so important, and everybody understands why. But the report does highlight, I think, one thing that we just have to absolutely be unified as a community on, which is the lack of social housing. 2%, that's what the report reminds us, and the state is 4.2%. We are just so short on social housing that everything else, I know it's a very complex subject and there's lots of dimensions to it, but if we don't successfully advocate to the state to increase the social housing to around the state average, we are going to be here in 3 years, 5 years' time talking about how dire the housing crisis is. The other one, I just think, again, I'm incredibly proud of this community and this council for applying to and successfully getting the UNESCO Biosphere status. What it's helped us to do is focus on the reportables through to an independent umpire, and I love that, that we make ourselves accountable to a third party that's going to really measure us and calibrate us against the best globally. But also it reminds us that the built form is a very important aspect of the biosphere, how you build things. And I must admit, that's the one area that I think we could do better on. I was at the presentation of the architects at Altitude 9 the other night, and they, I guess, were lamenting to some extent. They were celebrating as well, but they were sort of lamenting to some extent on how few of the buildings really reflected a Sunshine Coast vocabulary. Agree or disagree, I just think we need to recognise we're going to build a lot. When we add 200,000 people, we're going to build a lot of homes to house those people. We're going to build a lot of commercial buildings and a lot of industrial buildings. And at the moment, I don't think they reflect a circular economy, which is another commitment that we've made into this document. And just design principles that suit subtropical Queensland most of the time. So I would suggest to us that we could do more to look at whether we could develop, in collaboration with that industry sector, a centre of excellence, both on the built form, the materials and the design. And maybe we should be considering some sort of architectural design competition that we help to organise and perhaps even consider sponsoring to incentivise just better design of all the housing and commercial buildings and industrial buildings that we're going to build as we grow from 360,000 to 500,000 and then beyond to whatever the number is, 800,000 or 1 million before we may cap out. So I'd suggest this is really a stunning piece of work. Congratulations again to the team. We are incredibly fortunate to have such dedicated staff with such skills and experience. And again, I'd like to congratulate the two portfolio councillors to making sure that we maintain our commitment to really what is, I think, fundamental to this region. And I would certainly be looking forward to support the officer recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I also agree there's a lot of work that's been gone on in this space and trying to understand what our community want in terms of the character of this area, maintaining that. I hear that through this report that constantly they want the Sunshine Coast character to be maintained, and that's a big common denominator that I hear all over the area, not just in my division, but all over the area. But I did want to ask a question. On page 13 of this report, it talks about a new open space network blueprint is being prepared to establish a new desired standard of service with the revised provisions rate and accessibility targets for the growth corridor. We all know the growth corridor between Maroochydore and Caloundra, and I'm trying to understand, are we looking at reducing those targets or increasing the targets? Because if we're going to change them, I want to try and get...
Mr Mayor, we're still aiming to deliver on our 5 hectares per 1,000 residents, but how we deliver that in the urban corridor, which will have increasing population, is what we're looking at in terms of the type of different categories of open space that we provide. Because as you can appreciate, around land availability and land costs, we can't deliver it in the same way which we would be delivering it elsewhere across the organisation. So we'll still be aiming to deliver on the 5 hectares per 1,000 residents, but looking to do it in a slightly different way.
Thank you. And I think that's a clear point. You know, the fundamental basis of what we see here is the settlement pattern in one area here that you talk about. Pretty much that urban corridor and the infill being put through that spine. And yet, I know that in Division 4 we've had to buy land in Division 9 for sporting fields because we don't have enough land in Division 4 to be able to accommodate that. So we've had to buy land at Godfrey's Road, across the river. And of course, if we have to look outside that urban corridor to provide the sporting facilities, open space, the mass transit doesn't go there. You know, people still need to be able to get there. And a whole strategy, and I'm not convinced that our strategy for our settlement pattern is the smartest thing. It contradicts a whole range of other things in terms of putting, dealing with our turtles along that beach, along Bedina and all the way down there, with the light. We saw and read that with our turtle plan, that light is the biggest issue that turtles have when it comes to nesting, and yet we're going to concentrate our urban footprint there. The coastal adaptation has it contradicts again, some of those those issues. And I see our waterways, trying to manage our waterways, and I'm pleased to say that I've just read recently that Unity Water, after progressively dealing and taking the task from the very first meeting that we've had, in that they will eliminate all of their treated effluent into our waterways by 2040, which is a commendable target now that last year was 2050. Before that, they had no plan whatsoever. So I'm just pleased to see that at least that's a big plus for our water qualities. But, you know, the traffic and population right up against the coast, everything flows into our waterways and had very little chance of polishing that water before it gets into our waterways with litter and so forth. So I still am not convinced that our settlement pattern, as much as the great work that you've done, I still have some real concerns about how we're going to manage this. And only yesterday I had a briefing on the stormwater upgrades that have to go on in this urban corridor. And I asked the question, compared in terms of costs of being able to provide that infrastructure versus in a greenfield site, it's extraordinary. 4 times, maybe more, the costs. So, you know, councillors, this is going to be an incredibly costly process going down the settlement pattern. I'm not convinced that we'll ever be able to deal with the transport and traffic issues and congestion if people don't use public transport. And I still have real concerns about how we be able to manage all the services that we've got to provide this community, open space, recreational place, and how they actually get there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unlike the previous speaker, I'm quite enthusiastic about our future. But I'd just like to say, as a councillor who served Lansbury Shire and Clarendon City in the 1980s and early 1990s, that was a period when it was all about just putting basic infrastructure into place, you know, wheelie bins, developing some parks, all those sorts of things, building libraries, etc. And it's an absolute delight to be a part of a council now which puts emphasis on the other things which are important to living on the Sunshine Coast. And today we've had 5 reports for adoption. Economic development. We have to have economic development for jobs, for careers, for futures, and to make the area prosper. Our community strategy is vital because, and we have an excellent community strategy now. Environment and livability reports. You know, the thing that is so impressive about this council, and I must commend the CEO, the executive leadership, and the 6 councillors who have been part of bringing all these reports together with all the council officers and the community who have been involved. I must congratulate them on bringing forward such fantastic reports which show continual improvement and goals for the future which are achievable. And the thing that's really great about all of these reports and this council is that these aren't just documents that are going to sit on a shelf somewhere. These are documents that we live with. We live every day. And our people I encourage the community to become aware and have a look at the documents and become aware of what's in them, because I think they'll be impressed and incredibly surprised at how detailed and forward-thinking and looking all of these documents are. So it's been my pleasure to support the adoption of all of the recommendations this morning, and I'll be suggesting to myself that I do so with this report and this recommendation. So can I just say To all involved, well done.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. If there are no further speakers, I'll go back to Councillor Cox to close.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, appreciate the comments from councillors and their participation to the debate on this particular item. I was a bit surprised the conversation went in a particular direction, considering we're talking about, as Councillor Suarez said earlier, planning about the future. You know, it's not about today, not about tomorrow, but it is for our community into the future. And I think that gets lost in a little bit of the conversation that's just occurred. But I'm incredibly proud of the team, the way that they've consulted with our community, brought back their ideas. And yes, it is always challenging to get a unanimous support amongst our community, because someone that lives in Sippy Downs has got a different feeling for someone that maybe lives in the coastal corridor or in the hinterland, for example. So they have different value perceptions. And what we need to do as a council is to lead them on a particular journey. And this documentation, this refresh that we have, I believe, is at the forefront of leading our community down this journey into the future. I might just leave it there. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Babrowski, Councillor Cox, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Dixon, Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Suarez, Councillor Law, Councillor Jamieson. Those opposed? Councillor Natoli. The motion is carried. That might be an appropriate time to take a morning tea break. Can we be back at 11:30, please? We're up to item 8.6, which is the September 2023 Financial Performance Report. I invite Isaac Pickerskill to give us his last report for this term at the Sunshine Coast Council, at least, as we wish him well in his new career with Unity Water, which is, I guess, part of the family, so acceptable. So good on you, Isaac. We look forward to your report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning all. So councillors, at the end of September, the first quarter, our operating result was $106 million, which is favourable to budget by $4 million. So our revenues were below budget by 1.5, but also expenditure below budget of 5.5. Some highlights for our revenue. Our holiday parks were slightly ahead of budget at the first quarter, but we were below budget in our quarry services and also plumbing applications. Expenditure in terms of operating costs are below for employee costs due to vacancies throughout the organisation. The capital works program is at 19% complete, so $63.1 million expended, with 42.5% on the core capital program. Our cash for the end of September was $341 million, with our debt remaining unchanged at $425 million, and our debt borrowings still remain at 28.5 for this financial year. We have 16 term deposits with our investments, $170 million, with a weighted average interest rate of return of 5.1%. And the recommendation today, Mr Mayor, the Council will receive and note the report titled September 2023 Financial Performance Report.
Thank you, Isaac. Someone to move? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Johnston, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
I think Isaac has covered that quite confidently, and we'll miss you, Isaac. You're going on to another area. Now, I've always appreciated your responsiveness whenever I've asked questions and want things explained to me. You've been able to do that very competently, and you've done exemplary in the role you're in. So finding someone of your calibre is going to be a task, I can tell you. So from me, I've appreciated your input, and I will miss you, and I think the whole of council will. So the main points you got there, again, another excellent report, and shows our strong financial standing as always. The end of September, we have a positive operating result of $106 million. As of the 30th of September, $236 million operating revenue. We have $130 million that's been expended, resulting in a variance of $5.5 million. That's 4.1% lower than budget, and that's not a bad thing. During September, Council endorsed the first budget review, which resulted in an increase of capital works program of $1 million to increasing what we're doing. I think the biggest challenge out there is getting tenderers and people to actually do the job and the materials. That's our biggest holding back. Otherwise, we could be producing a lot more quicker. As of September 2023, 63 million or 19% of our 332 million capital works program has been financially expended. And again, I put there only being 19% at this stage is actually getting the works out there. And that's our biggest impediment at the moment, getting tenderers and contractors on the ground. The core capital program has progressed 15.7% of budget, an actual spend of 44 million. Now corporate projects progressed 23.5%. We've also on transportation, we've been doing very well. Our 25 million road resurfacing and rehabilitation program has progressed 28% with a spend of 7 million. We've had 8 million unsealed road upgrades program has progressed 42% with a spend of 3.3 million. 1 million bus stop program has progressed 29% with a spend of 329,000. And a pedestrian and cycling enabling facilities has progressed 38% to a spend of 1.2 million. Very strong. Council's cash at September 30, 341 million, and pleasingly our debt remains low, but we've got a very strong focus on our debt. We're at 425 million, which was the same as last month, but we do have our waste facilities and the MRF and those things going forward to get the organics out of our waste stream to save us even more money in the future, and that's coming up. Otherwise, we're in a very healthy position. I'm happy with how we're travelling. Just getting those works out on the ground and getting the actual contracts and tenderers on the ground to get the jobs done, that's our biggest hindrance at the moment. Otherwise, we're travelling very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. No further speakers? You don't need to close, Councillor. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? There you go. Isaac, carried unanimously. Thanks very much. Good on you. Thanks, Michael. We'll move to 8.7, the Audit Committee meeting of 7 September and 6 October. And Tom will be nearby. There he is. Thanks, Tom. We look forward to your presentation.
Mr. Mayor. Greetings, Mr. Mayor, Madam Chief Executive, councillors, group executive, members of the public. Get to the privilege of reporting to you on the last two audit committees, one on the 7th of September, which was a full meeting, and one on the 6th of October, which was to consider the financial statements for audit committee endorsement. Just a couple of highlights from the September 7th meeting. We had the Queensland Auditor General attend and address the audit committee. There was a couple of reports from the Queensland Audit Office and a draft of the financial statements. I'm happy to take questions on any of the items.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Okay, someone to move. Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Law. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Mr. Mayor, it's a statutory obligation to prepare the general purpose statements for tabling our annual report for the year. So this is the step before we put our annual report out. So the general purpose statements and financial sustainability statement for 2023 have been audited by the Queensland Audit Office to ensure accounting and legislative compliance. The summary of the final audit is contained in the Queensland Audit Office closing report for the financial year ended 30th of June 2023. The Queensland Audit Office has indicated it expects to issue an unmodified audit option. That's number 15 for us in a row. Absolutely outstanding. The Audit Committee received the final draft financial statements for the 2022-23 financial year. The Audit Committee noted and acknowledged the positive outcome of the audit process and the work undertaken to achieve this audit outcome. The Audit Committee advised that it has been actively involved in the preparation process throughout the year, and in that process has reviewed previous drafts of the financial statements and has received an update on changes which have occurred to those drafts up to the finalisation of the final draft. Based on the work of the Audit Committee, subject to the completion of the outstanding matters, the Audit Committee is not aware of any issues which would prevent Council from adopting this draft and approving the Council's financial statements for the year 2022-2023. That is a very strong result and shows that the community can be confident that this council is second to none on financial management governance and accounting. And I'm very proud to be part of this, and the community should be proud of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Any further speakers? Okay, you need to close? No, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks very much, Tom. 8.8 is the Systemic Inspection Program for Regulated Dogs, and I invite Tanya Esser to give us a presentation. Thank you, Tanya.
Do I have to do that before this or when it comes to the vote? Okay, Mr Mayor, on this one here, out of abundance of caution, I wish to notify that I have a declarable conflict of interest in 8.8 Systemic Inspection Program for Regulated Dogs. Now that's been considered in this item here due to the fact that I was involved in an incident involving a dog, walking our beagle Lola, an unrestrained at large dog attacked. It was quite a traumatic experience, resulting in substantial injuries and surgery and a recuperation fee for our dog. Since then, that dog has been declared a regulated dog. The matters of the incident being investigated and dealt with by council at the moment, and are currently, well, could be, currently subject to legal proceedings in the future. So the fact that I have a case as a live one myself and council is dealing with this today, from the abundance of caution I said before, I've formed the view that I'll exclude myself from the meeting while this agenda item is being discussed and vote taken by my colleagues to remove any doubt of me having any bias or undue influence on this issue, because I'm personally involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. We'll send for you when we're through this matter. Okay, Tanya, over to you.
Mr Mayor. Today I'm here to talk about the Systematic Inspection Program for Regulated Dogs. Council manages dangerous and menacing dogs as set out in the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act, and is responsible to make sure that dog owners meet the conditions. These include items such as placing a sign at the property, identifying a property of a regulated dog, ensuring that the dog wears a special collar and a tag. There are strict rules around containment, and council needs to be notified if a regulated dog is relocated. Dangerous dogs need to be muzzled in a public place. In our last inspection program, 130 dogs were inspected, and approximately 12% of regulated dogs were non-compliant and needed further compliance actions to take place. In summary, the program is expected to run from the 14th of November 2023 to the 13th of November 2024, and is funded through the registration fees collected for regulated dogs. These will include 129 properties where regulated dogs reside on the coast, and non-compliance will be managed through the Animal Management Act and our compliance and enforcement policy. Council also continues to improve resources to assist regulated dog owners to be compliant. It is my request that Council adopt the Systematic Inspection Program and approve the further 12 months of this program.
Thank you, Tanya. Somebody to move? Councillor Dixon. Seconder, please. Councillor Babarowski, sorry. Councillor. Like to open, Councillor Dixon?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, we do this annually. Very important, and I'd like to think Council is actually very pro-dog, and we're very much in this space because not only is it part of core business for Council, but I think the staff are actually really good in being in this space and talking with people. If I hear one request that comes out often from Division 6, it is we'd like to see more staff on the ground to help us with regulating dogs in public spaces. And, you know, we've got so many registered dogs on the Sunshine Coast, and that's gone up significantly with COVID. I know myself, I adopted one dog from a refuge and got another one from a farm up in Mullaney, a working farm. So I've got two Kelpies, and I know as a responsible dog owner myself that most people are doing the right thing, because I see it. I see everybody out and about with their bags and their leads, and most people are doing the right thing. But there's also people like me who have actually put in complaints to Council about menacing and vicious dogs in the community. I've done that myself this year. I was coming across a dog on a walk, and I actually didn't feel too safe about that dog. I won't say where it was or what the issue was, but I put that into council and that was dealt with and addressed. And I've been past that property and I no longer see that dog. I can walk down the street with my family again. These issues are really important, and whilst we have a lot of registered dogs and people doing the right thing, there are people who unfortunately do the wrong thing. And we can't just blame the dogs. It really comes down to the ownership of the people involved. And we have seen dog attacks on the Sunshine Coast. And I guess the point is that we take these very, very seriously. You heard Councillor Winston talk before about euthanasia. It's not something that this council primarily goes to. We are constantly out there as a team in a council educating the community. I know, and I've seen them, I've been to them, there are regular pop-ups in the community about responsible pet ownership and management all the time. You know, I could list 6 or 7 that I've seen this term in Division 6 that have been in my area, and they're well attended. People actually appreciate it. The people doing the right thing really appreciate those avenues. But we need these laws. We need these inspections, and, you know, I actually think they're really good value. If you think about it, you go through the schedule and the costs incurred for having a declared dog that requires a appropriate location, storage facility and inspection. It's quite good value. If anything, I think we should be discouraging people from having certain breeds in the region. I know we need to be working on that further with the state government, because there are trends. You know, people don't like to say it, but there are certain breeds and trends that seem to re-offend in my personal view. But we need these regulatory frameworks. People need to feel safe. And, you know, I've gone through a lot, and I won't get into the Point Cartwright decision, but I've had a lot of people actually approach me and say, you know, Christian, we want to see dogs removed because we've actually been bitten or we've been attacked in these precincts. And, you know, some of that's really hard to hear. You know, I spoke to a lady on email on Monday, and she's very upset with me because I obviously don't support the position, but she said, Christian, I'm traumatised. I don't now go out in public. I'd like to see all dogs banned off leash from every place on the coast, and you can only have dogs off leash at your home. You know, and there's some people that will take some very strong views because, you know, they are traumatised by these incidences. So, Mr Mayor, without dragging on, not only is this something we have to do, I think it's something we should do, and I think we do it well. But let's not be too afraid, because when you think about the amount of registrations we have in the region, and don't quote me on this, but I know it's over 50,000 pets that are registered. Winston's saying 60,000. We've got such a small amount that are actually registered here for inspection, an extremely low amount. This doesn't concern me too much, and again, I actually just want to thank the team. And I had a tour out at the pound last week for a pet partnership meeting, and Tanya Esser took me around, and I got to see the cat enclosures and dog enclosures and where the pigs and the horses go and whatnot. And to my surprise, the pound was actually quite empty. There wasn't a lot of animals there, and the team were just walking me through how they try and reconnect dogs that get out back to their owners. That's you know, I saw a cat being taken back out and handed to some customers who came in to collect their cat. So I'm confident that we're doing everything we can in this space, and from a portfolio point of view, I'm actually really proud of the team. So, yeah, probably didn't need to say all that, but you know, I think sometimes you just need to step back and appreciate that we're in a pretty good space.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And Tanya, thank you very much for bringing this report to the Council for adoption. Regulated dogs and dangerous dogs are indeed a problem, but they are only a smallish problem on the Sunshine Coast. However, we've still got to deal with them. And, you know, I went to the local government conference last week, and I attended the Control of Dangerous Dogs workshop that they had. We had the Mayor of Scenic Rim there talking about it, and he was saying how they'd declared a dangerous dog, etc., etc. It went through various levels of appeal with QCAT, and then court cases, etc., etc. They spent $1 million, and the dog's still going. He's still not been dealt with. And as he was saying, for a council their size, which has a revenue of some $50 million, $1 million just to deal with the dog is a lot of money. So it's important that we have good policy that we can fall back on in relation to this issue. And I would like to thank all of those staff who, employees of the council who have to deal with this matter, because it's quite risky in some cases, and not everybody has the ability to deal with that sort of situation. So thank you very much, and I encourage councillors to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. There are no further speakers. Go back to Councillor Dixon to close, not necessary. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thanks, Tanya, very much. Yes, if we can find Councillor Hungerford. As we prepare for item 8.9, the disposal by lease of the Sunshine Coast Maroochydore Multideck Car Park Commercial Suite. Thank you, Lee. Just hold one sec till we get Councillor Hungerford. The car park is just down the road. Okay, thank you, Councillor Hungerford. We're up to 8.9. In your hands, Lee.
Thank you. This report has been submitted to seek an exception from Council in accordance with Local Government Regulations 2012. The exception seeks to allow Council to dispose of land by way of lease via open market negotiations rather than undertaking a second tender release for Tenancy 1 within the multi-deck car park at 4 Lightning Lane. Council is currently undertaking the development and construction of a multi-deck car park to support the needs of the Maroochydore City Centre. The multi-deck car park is due for completion towards the end of 2023. The multi-deck car park contains 2 tenancy spaces. Tenancy 1, which is suited to retail uses and is 57 square metres, and Tenancy 2, which is suited for commercial and retail uses at 214 square metres. Council owns the multi-deck car park land in freehold, which is located at 4 Lightning Lane, Maroochydore. A locality plan highlights the location of the car park and is shown in attachment 1 of this report. Council offered the 2 tenancies to the market via tender, which closed on Tuesday, 26th of September 2023. Submissions were received in response to the tender for Tenancy 2, however, no submissions were received in response to the tender for Tenancy 1. Council officers are now seeking to release Tenancy 1 through its appointed real estate agent to seek prospective tenants from the open market rather than undertake a second tender release. Placing the tenancy on the open market is expected to have the following benefits for Council. It's more time efficient and it's more typical of the method used by the private sector, which commercial operators are familiar. It provides Council with the opportunity to negotiate and counter-offer with prospective tenants, as well as engage through the offer process. And it takes advantage of any momentum and marketing materials provided by the current real estate and marketing agent. On the basis no submissions were received for Tenancy 1, it is requested that Council grant an exception under the Local Government Regulation 2012 to have the tenancy leased by private treaty. An exception is applicable as Tenancy 1 has previously been released to market via tender. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Someone happy to move? Councillor Natoli, thank you. Have a seconder? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support this, and it's a clunky process that we have to go through, but we have to meet the state government's regulations and requirements when we go through this process. And if, for instance, Tenancy 2, we can't negotiate an outcome and we end up prospective interest walks away, will this need to come back to Council? Will we be able to pick up with this motion here?
Another report to consider the exception for Tenancy 2. The rationale behind not including it in this report is because we didn't want to preempt determination of the tender evaluation for the applicants that have submitted now.
It is very clunky. It is a difficult process to go through, and it would be lovely if we had another aspect of this that could delegate that to the CEO if we could. if those negotiations, and hopefully they do go through, but if they don't. Anyway, I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. No further speakers? Don't need to close, Councillor. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Lee. We're moving to 8.10, which is the Sunshine Coast Council Policy Framework. And Heike, hello Heike, we're ready for your presentation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, good afternoon. I'm Heike Herling, the Governance Policy and Project Officer in the Governance Process and Policy team within the Corporate Governance function of Council. This report seeks Council adoption of the strategic policy, the policy framework, which replaces the policy framework Council adopted shortly following amalgamation in 2009. In June this year, a review of Council's policy framework commenced. The policy framework provides a structure for the scope and approval authorities of Council's internal and external-facing policy documents. The framework supports over 120 policy documents, more than 40 of which are Council-endorsed strategic policies. The Corporate Plan's delivery pathway regarding maintaining a contemporary governance framework and the establishment of the new Civic Governance Group earlier this year prompted the commencement of this policy framework review project. The development and setting of policy is a core tool for local government decision makers to support the delivery of regional strategy objectives, guide the delivery of services, and support the operations of the organisation in a manner in line with legislation and Council's vision and goals. Contemporary best practice in local government policy development indicates value in the following: transparent policy development and approval processes, regular policy reviews, and policy being informed by strategic direction. This revised policy framework has been drafted following a process of reflection on current practice, research on best practice, comparative benchmarking, and internal stakeholder engagement activities. In the development of this revised policy framework, regard was had to the Local Government Managers Association of Queensland's model policy framework. 12 local government policy frameworks and 2 university policy frameworks were compared for benchmarking. Internal stakeholder engagement for this revised policy framework included a survey reaching across the organisation, and meetings were held with key officers supporting decision makers in the organisation. This engagement and research has allowed us to identify the elements of contemporary best practice in local government policy development, which has influenced the recommended revised policy framework for adoption. The revised policy framework now sets principles for policy development and for policy setting. The principles include that Sunshine Coast Council policy meets a need, is clear, consistent, accessible and complete, is evidence-based and of our values, prepares for our future, is for our region, is people-centred, is sustainable, and is made in consideration of the local government principles in the Local Government Act at Section 4. In regards to policy development processes, the Sunshine Coast Council policy development processes are initiated in response to an identified need and well understood problems, are guided by Council's community engagement policy and excellence in engagement framework to ensure fit-for-purpose stakeholder engagement, are informed by full and frank advice and decided by an appropriate authority, be that Council, the Chief Executive Officer or Group Executive, in a transparent and accountable manner. Communicated and published policy positions are made readily accessible. Monitor the effectiveness and efficiency of implementation activities to enable future reflection. Regularly review and evaluate how relevant a policy is and how well it is achieving its purpose in the ever-changing policy environment. The revised policy framework clearly communicates the document hierarchy and approval authorities and reflects current practice, with no significant changes in this regard. The revised policy framework provides guidance regarding appropriate establishment and naming of new policies, To ease navigation in the policy set, consolidation of policies with like topics will be pursued wherever practical to do so. Policy naming will be concise and plainly state the relevant policy topic. Policy review frequency. Policies will require review at least every 4 years. Policyholders must then update or confirm the currency of the policy and bring a report to the approving authority for consideration and re-endorsement. This will facilitate Council receiving a review report for each Council-endorsed policy document during each term of Council. And new requirements for policy reporting. The Executive Leadership Team will receive reports when a new policy is proposed or a policy review scheduled. The policy framework maintains the 3 levels of current practice in policy levels and provides for guideline documents. Approval authorities and rationales are provided. The policy level rationales are articulated in contemporary language and continue a consistent intention to the previous policy framework. For example, a strategic policy will continue to be for Council adoption where a policy is required to meet a statutory requirement, policy addresses a direct community impact, or policy is addressing organisational issues and is of strategic significance or includes a community impact. Examples of this policy level include the debt policy, environment levy policy, or sponsorship policy. An organisational policy will continue to be for CEO approval on advice from ELT, where policy addresses an organisational-wide need, gives effect to organisational practice in complying with statutory requirements, may address community-facing impacts where related to service excellence. Examples of policies of an organisational level include the Administrative Access and Right to Information policy, the Brand policy, Business Record Keeping policy, or the Local Government Quadrennial Elections policy. Operational policies will continue to provide for the circumstances where a policy is required to respond to a localised group-level need, to document practice and expectations to guide day-to-day operations, and will be approved by group executive level. Guidelines will continue to be for content of an operational nature, generally supporting the implementation of policies, and will be for CEO approval on advice of the group executive or delegated as appropriate. Subject to endorsement, progressive implementation of the revised policy framework will commence in early 2024 to coincide with the commencement of the new 4-year term of Council. Prior to that time, considerable work on stage 2 of the policy framework review project will be advanced, including process improvements and conducting a health check on all strategic and organisational policy documents, including scheduling of reviews over the coming 4 years, with a prioritisation process considering a number of policy risk factors. Stage 3 will include raising organisational awareness of the revised policy framework, development of guidance materials, a policy toolkit, and the offering of training opportunities for staff. It is anticipated that all policy documents will achieve compliance with the revised policy framework over the coming 4 years. It is recommended that Council receive and note the report titled Sunshine Coast Council Policy Framework and endorse the Sunshine Coast Council Policy Framework at Appendix A, replacing the policy framework document adopted by Council in 2009. Thank you.
Thank you, Heike. Councillor Natoli to move. Seconded, Councillor Hungerford. You'd like to open, Councillor Natoli?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and well done, Heike. The word that comes to my mind is ambitious. This is a really ambitious project to try and go through the entire framework and policy to bring everything in line. And, you know, after having that briefing that I received from you, it's definitely cutting edge. We're right at the forefront of being able to be a modern organisation, developing modern policy frameworks that enable this organisation to be able to function a lot better. And it's comprehensive in every aspect. To be able to deliver this over a 4-year period, I look forward to seeing the final results. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, probably explain this a bit. This is the adoption of a strategic policy, which is one of our core responsibilities under the Act, the Local Government Act. This will replace the policy framework adopted by Council in 2009, so it's well overdue for us to upgrade and look at this area. Because there's been legislative changes in the past, we need to bring ourselves in line with that. This will guide the delivery of services and support the operations of the organisation in a manner that is in line with legislation and Council's visions and goals. We've got to bring the two together. It will be current, consistent and functional policy that will facilitate transparent and accountable decision making. And that changes over time with the circumstances. We've got to be flexible in doing that. And the regulatory compliance and sound risk management, which goes with it as well. The revised policy framework provides a more contemporary structure to support increased clarity, transparency and accountability in the decision making related to policy development. Like I was saying, that changes over time. The revised policy framework places a stronger emphasis on evidence-based policy development, responsiveness to expectations, and that's with the community as well as we go through changing times, and best practice and a clearer alignment with this organisation's values. So this new policy will meet the need to enable for transparency and accountability and good governance. It is clear, consistent and accessible and complete. It will be evidence-based and of our values. Will prepare us for the future, is for the whole region, meaningful in our local context for our current community. Is people-centred, and that means our customers and our community. They're the centre of everything we do. This will be sustainable. We take a balanced approach that meets the social, cultural, economic and environmental needs. We haven't done this since 2009, so I think it was very timely that we looked at this again and bring ourselves up to speed with where we are and in line with our community's expectations at the moment. So I put to you, councillors, this is a little bit overdue, but very needed and very timely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll be quick. Thank you, Heike, and also to Gina and to Craig and to Megan as well. Coming in as a new councillor this term, often a lot of the policies or issues that we raised have been related to existing policies, and when we had a look at them, they were quite outdated. This existing policy was quite outdated, so the changes that are reflected in here will ensure that no matter which council comes in, the policies should be up to date, and the new council and the community will also know where to find those policies and make sure that they're up to date and they're not outdated, reflect the current changes and our current environment. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Heike. Maybe I should call you Miss Hewling, because I don't know you. I just wanted to question about the policy framework. It's got down the bottom that it's adopted in 2009. Have there been any changes to that framework, or is it only the policies that are attached to the framework that have changed?
Mayor, yes, that policy framework from 2009 hasn't had any amendments since its adoption.
Thank you very much. I will be voting in favour.
Thank you. No further speakers. I'll go back to Councillor Natoli to close. Not necessary. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Heike. We move to 8.11, which is the proposed amendments to the Palmview structure plan. And we'll have Nicola Jarvis coming to give us a presentation shortly. Should it be necessary for us to go into the detailed planning report, we may need to go into confidential session during this report. So just bear that in mind if you want to raise anything from that particular document. Welcome to the team, Nicholas, James, Brad and Grant. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So we just go to the first slide. So development in the Palmview is regulated by 3 key documents, these being the Palmview Structure Plan, the Planning Scheme Policy for Palmview, and also an infrastructure agreement being Infrastructure Agreement number 2. In March 2021, the developers in Palmview, being the Palmview landowners, sought changes to these development documents with an emphasis to amend the road network. Since this time, officers have been negotiating with the landowners to achieve 3 main things. A fully functioning road network as informed by Council's traffic modelling, securing a road network that allows all development fronts in Palmview to continue, and also to secure additional funding for community facilities for the Palmview community. In terms of the existing road network, it contains 5 main links, being the Claymore Road, the Southern Road Link, Spring Hill Drive, the Southern Road Link Upgrade, and the Bruce Highway connection. The triggers for the delivery of these roads is measured in EDs, being equivalent dwellings, with 1 equivalent dwelling basically being 1 detached house. Under the current development documents, key development fronts will actually come to a standstill until such time that the Southern Road Link is complete, which is actually link number 2 as shown on the plan. The Southern Road Link is a timely and expensive build, and at this point in time it's estimated it will not be completed until mid-2026 at the earliest. Let me just go to the next one. The proposed network recognises the Bruce Highway is conditioned by the Department of Transport and Main Roads as a second link. It resequences the road network and assigns a progressive release of EDs to ensure that development fronts can actually continue. Removes the requirement for the Southern Road Link upgrade, subject to changes to the Southern Road Link and also the Claymore Road upgrades to ensure that we do actually achieve a fully functioning road network in accordance with the recommendations of our traffic modelling, and importantly enables the District Activity Centre to be built in conjunction with the Southern Road Link, recognising there is a community need for facilities in that area. Importantly, cost savings that we've actually achieved through the proposed network can actually be redirected towards community facilities for the Palmview community. So one of the key changes, or that we're actually ensuring through the proposed amendments of the drafting of the revised development documents, is to ensure that the outstanding infrastructure is delivered before the landowners receive any additional development entitlements. It also gives greater certainty and control over the delivery of future infrastructure, and importantly the road infrastructure, by requiring landowners to actually build or bond the infrastructure as key links are actually triggered within the network. In order to amend the road network, it's going to take a series of changes to the development documents. With respect to the planning scheme amendments, which is the structure plan and the planning scheme policy, we're proposing a temporary local planning instrument to override the provisions contained in the planning scheme. This is an important step, obviously giving the time and imperatives to ensure our development fronts do continue within this area. It will also mean an amendment to the Palmview Infrastructure Agreement, currently Consolidation number 2, and also entering into a state government infrastructure agreement to actually secure additional funds for community facilities. Is there any questions?
Councillor Hungerford, thank you. In your hands, Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I just firstly just start? This is very important. I just want to acknowledge Nicola, James, Brad and Grant and Deborah Robinson. And I need to do that because What I'm about to say might ruffle a few feathers, but I just need to acknowledge the staff, because the staff have worked extremely hard on this project to the point where I've been meeting with them extremely often, whether that's in City Hall or Teams meetings. And, for a fact, I caught up with them recently and they all looked exhausted because they'd been in several day meetings with the landowners in Brisbane. And there's actually 3 landowners here, so this is not a straightforward, simple development like Stockland at Aura. I just want to set out that I've been involved in this for a long time. I remember when Caloundra City Council had this land sort of earmarked as a future growth area. This was like a local growth management strategy some time ago. And in the new Sunshine Coast Council, it started to translate into a way of doing development. There was the Palmview structure plan or master plan. And it went through a few iterations. But even back then, we were engaging with the Sippy Downs community about how a new community that would be double the size of theirs integrate into a local area. And there were questions about road access, the town centre, commercial, sewerage, water, highway access, all those type of things. And when the development was put together, we wanted to make it very clear that Claymore Road would be the first access into the development, because the developer at the time wanted to have their primary access through the heart of Sippy Downs, which would have absolutely destroyed the local road network. Fast forward, you've now got road upgrades around Sippy Downs that are doing their best to cope with the Sippy Downs population. But for the very fact I was nearly late here this morning, it nearly took me an hour to get to City Hall from Sippy Downs, which is usually a 23, 25-minute trip, because the local road network is completely broken now. Councillor Joe will know this. Claymore Road is broken. The Sunshine Motorway is broken. Dixon Road is broken. Ballinger Road is broken. Karawatha Drive is breaking. Golf Links Road is breaking. Mooloolaba Road at Budrum is broken. We've got a lot of failures in the network. But this gets to the point of why we're here today, because we actually need to resolve what's happening. Back in 2010, myself and the state member for Kawana at the time, Jared Blay, were begging the state government to bring on a Western Access link to Palmview, because we knew Palmview would be real. We knew the development was going to happen. There were plans underway, but there was no formalised indication that the Bruce Highway access would ever happen. It was just an annotation on a map as a possible future road. To the state government's credit, to Minister Sterling Hinchcliffe at the time, he said, we're going to do it, it's going to be part of the planning. Fast forward today, some 13 years later, and the Bruce Highway access is still not open. It's been extended and been extended and been extended, and as a resident who lives there myself, I built and bought in there, and in 2018, the road still is not open. It's supposed to open in June 2022. A lot of water under the bridge. But this gets to the point of the meeting today. Why are we here? Why are we even talking about Palmview? It's a development, it's been endorsed, the landowners are out there, they're building. The truth is, the landowners are about to run out of dwellings. The development is about to stop completely, which means if we do nothing and we sit on the current agreement, there is no more development at Palmview. There are no new lots, there is no new infrastructure. In fact, nothing happens. And I'm just going to say this publicly, it greatly concerns me, because there is, to my personal belief, a likelihood that the state government might turn up and say, well, if council and the developers can't get your development right, we might just take it over. They've certainly shown an interest in other local government areas in the past. So we need to get something to change. What needs to change? Well, the team have been negotiating with the landowners, all 3 of them. And I made the point it's difficult because we're not just dealing with one developer. There are many parts to this exercise, and it also involves Unity, Water and the state government. It becomes more difficult. So what's new? What's new in the deal? And I've got some points here to stay on track. $15 million that would have gone to the state government for contributions now comes back to the community, to council for community infrastructure, which means we're hopefully going to see delivery of community facilities in the network sooner, and we're going to lock them in. For things that haven't been delivered, like the Bruce Highway on time or local parklands, we're going to start bonding the developer. They're going to build it or they're going to bond it, which means they don't get the home releases until they pay up for the work or they do the work themselves. Extremely important, because residents are asking me all the time, how, Mr Mayor, you're looking for an extension?
I'm going to get you an extension. Yes, someone to move. Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Suarez. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. And residents have been asking me time and time How does the developer continually deliver lots without the infrastructure? This agreement will renegotiate that, so they are very much on the hook. For every dwelling that you're getting, it is tied to an infrastructure provision. And if you're not building it, you're paying for it, and we will build that infrastructure. It de-risks this development for council. One of the greatest risks for us right now is the southern road to Calandra Road. And not just because of its hierarchy and the local network provision for access, but the fact that it's an expensive road. Don't have the exact figure on me, but I've heard numbers like $70 million, you know, to the extent of the Bells Creek arterial that runs from Aura all the way down to the Bruce Highway. Not the same link in size, but in value, an enormous road. And the risk of us allowing the developer to do more lots without the infrastructure is a huge risk, not just for council, but for the community. In this new agreement, it protects council and the community from those risks. Very important for local residents that the district activity centre, the local shopping precinct, is delivered. And we're very much pushing the developers on that. 5 years into the development and people are still driving 12, 13 minutes like I do around to Coles or Woolworths at Zippy Downs or abroad to Aldi at Maroochydore or Brightwater because they don't have any local shops other than a cafe, which means it goes against all our plans for sustainability and smart traffic planning. It just puts more traffic on the road network. So there's some good news. We're locking down roads, we're locking down dates. Developer doesn't get lots unless they deliver infrastructure. In fact, there's no new lots until the Bruce Highway opens. They're not getting a cent more until that occurs. We're locking that down, and the developer's telling us they agree with that. The road is very much on track. In fact, on Saturday, I'm going to an update in the community on the road because the intel I'm getting is the road will be trafficable by Christmas. That is the intel that I got this week, which is fantastic. We're also looking to get money for Claymore Road. As I mentioned earlier, Claymore Road is jammed up, so there's going to be more money for Claymore Road upgrades to improve intersections and transport, essential. But also that money for community facilities. Let us not forget that Zippy Downs and Palmview are such large communities, we don't have a community centre. There are no libraries, there are no centres, there are no swimming pools owned by council. In fact, we rely on everything provided to us in the community by the University of the Sunshine Coast. They have been our biggest supporter in providing community infrastructure for over 20 years. This money is desperately needed to provide facilities for the community of Division 6. There's a lot more, Mr Mayor, that I can get into. This is extremely technical. In fact, it has taken a lot of meetings between myself and staff to get my head around this. But the real question that people will ask is this a good deal for the community? I always think there are better deals, but this is the best deal we can secure, and our staff have worked hard because this keeps the power of planning in our hands. We can work with the landowners, we lock down and secure the infrastructure, and the developer gets nothing without providing that infrastructure up front or bonding that money, those works to council to secure us for the future of those works in the area. I have been very nervous about this, but I'll be fair with you and transparent that I think the staff have convinced me through their hard work that this is the best deal we can get. And the fact that if we do nothing, if we sit here and this does not get supported today, effectively Palmview stops. There's no more development, there's no more homes, and there's no more infrastructure. And I can't support that outcome. So for today, I'll thank the staff and I'll thank the community for their patience, and I will be supporting the officer recommendation.
Councillor Dixon. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't really have anything additional to add to the debate on top of what Councillor Dixon has said, but I just wanted to make a public comment, I guess, to his community, because I know he's been working on this for a number of years to basically confirm that you have been for years trying to hold the developer to account to deliver on the promises that they were to deliver on in their development application. And I know that you've worked really hard with the community, you've worked hard with the developers, and you've worked hard with the staff to get this outcome. So if you're satisfied with this outcome with the staff, then I will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I totally support Councillor Dixon's comments that he's made. It's really difficult for him having gone through this entire journey, and it's what is round 12, and you're not knocked out yet. Neither has the developer. I mean, it is about a battle that has been going on, and having lived in Palmview now for a bit over 3 years, it's clear to a lot of the residents that the developer hasn't kept their promise in terms of delivering the access to the highway, and I think there's many residents that feel the struggle every morning. I have to make that decision whether I go down Claymore Road or whether I turn left into University Way and work out which way is easier for me to get to work. It's a struggle, and it's not going to get any easier as the population of that area continues to grow. And I feel for Councillor Dixon, because as much as I would love, and I think I mentioned to you at the time that I wouldn't be surprised if residents take out a class action against the developer for misrepresenting through a contract phase where people signed up to buying land on the promise that infrastructure would be delivered by a certain time. And a lot of residents have been let down because of that. But at the same time, we have this big stick over our head called the state government. We've seen how the state government has reacted and supported the development industry over sometimes the interests of our local communities. And that to me saddens me, because it takes away the legitimate right of local councils to be able to manage the expectations of our community, deliver the outcomes that we want. And right at the beginning, when this contract was set in stone, they agreed to it. And for them to be coming back time and time again, asking for changes, is really quite difficult. Difficult for the local councillor, difficult for the communities that have an expectation that infrastructure will be delivered. So I will support this, albeit I'm not happy, but I will support you, Councillor Dixon, because I think, like you said, this is the best deal that we can get and move on.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question, if I may, about the delivery of the Southern Road link. Could I just get you to explain, as if I was a member of the community, when can I expect the Southern Road link to be delivered, and how would that be financed, assuming that this proposed amendments were supported today?
Through you, Mr Mayor. At this stage, it's actually proposed to be finalised by mid-2026. In reality, we probably think it's close to 2027. We still need to actually go through the land acquisition process to actually secure the whole alignment for that Southern Road link. In terms of funding, it is actually funded through the landowners for Palmview, so that's been very important, I suppose, consideration during our renegotiation, that we actually do get a fully funded road network, that the general ratepayer isn't in fact paying for this road, and putting those securities in place to actually ensure that if developers do actually default, that there are sufficient funds in the prescribed road infrastructure fund, or that we actually get security around bonding and performance securities, that we can actually draw down upon that and actually finalise the construction ourselves. And so that not only goes for the Southern Road link, but also the Racecourse Road interchange as well. So we were particularly conscious of obviously what's happened with the Bruce Highway connection, and ensuring that we actually have sufficient controls that that doesn't happen into the future.
Thank you very much for that answer. I wanted to be absolutely sure that the community understood this was not an either-or. It's a change in sequencing, and that their expectation that the Southern Road link would be delivered as part of the offer for this development, and their expectations as a community is still real, and perhaps more real now. I just wanted to check, is there a mechanism to check in with the community to see whether they agree with this rearrangement of the sequencing and the road network?
Through you, Mr Mayor. As we've stated, we are proposing to actually amend the road network via a temporary local planning instrument, just obviously because the development front will actually come to a standstill, and we all know the pressures around housing supply at this stage on the coast. That will, however, still need a required scheme amendment. And what we're actually proposing to do is to put it through with the new planning scheme, which obviously then the members of the public can actually make comment and representation through that as well. The other thing is that a temporary local planning instrument doesn't actually override the 242 application, which is the preliminary approval over the site at the moment. And that will actually be required to be an impact accessible application, so the community can actually have the opportunity to comment through that process as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've just got one question in relation to the present moment, I do. And that is, because we're now dealing with the fourth iteration of the infrastructure agreement, they seem to keep on coming back to us. I'd just like to be certain on behalf of the community and behalf of the council that this is the final version, that if they come back to us wanting to make changes, that, you know, basically we have to say to them, look, this has all been discussed, this has all been finalised, that you agreed to it, no more change. Would that be factual?
Through you, Mr Mayor, unfortunately not. There are, when they actually lodged all the changes to the development documents back in March 2021, there were up to around 200 proposed changes. The road network was obviously the more pressing issue, and probably the issue which was obviously of substantial cost to the developers and also substantial risk to council. And so we've obviously focused in on that at this point in time. There were a number of other amendments that the developers are actually seeking, and we are proposing to actually still consider those next year.
Right, thank you. Maybe I misspoke and I should have asked you, is this the final iteration in relation to road infrastructure? And how firm are we on that?
Through you, Mr Mayor, at this point in time, officers believe that this is actually a good road network in terms of, like we said, release of EDs. It's a more practical road network. There's actually, that then sits within the current development documents. The landowners / developers can at any stage actually come back and seek additional changes, and under the contract being the infrastructure agreement, we would need to consider them in good faith. However, any other additional changes which are proposed, we would really need to consider them in the context of council's risk, particularly with respect to the Southern Road Link.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. At the last local government election, there was a boundary change, and this area was formerly Division 1. It became obviously Division 6 at the time, and Division 3 is almost immediately to the south. So clearly, Councillor Dixon and myself have got a bit of a vested interest in, obviously, these developments with this report here today. That being said, I just wanted to personally thank the team for the hard work. I mean, this has been years in development to get to this particular stage, and I know that there's been a personal toll amongst the team because it's been significant. The risks that have been identified in the report, if we don't approve this today, are very significant and have been well considered by the team, and it gives me a lot more confidence knowing that they're happy to recommend what's here in front of us today, because I know that you wouldn't settle for for anything less than what's in council's best interests. So I just want to make that acknowledgement, and I'll certainly be supporting this here today.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, just a couple of questions, if I may. One of the most important things from my observations is around the community benefit. So I've heard that there's a sum of money involved along with road infrastructure being provided. Are there constraints about what that money can be used for? Because oftentimes it seems that we're provided with land but no money to build, which leaves us, on behalf of the ratepayers, with a significant problem. So what are the constraints around the money that's on the table here for the community facilities?
Through you, Mr Mayor, at the moment, under the Palmview infrastructure agreement, we actually do receive the land for proposed community facilities, and that community facilities network is actually outlined within the structure plan. In terms of funding, under the current infrastructure agreement, they actually do need to pay a per lot contribution, which is $1,500. It's an indexed amount that obviously goes up every year towards the construction of community facilities. The additional funding that we're actually receiving via the proposed amendment it's restricted to be used for community facilities which are identified in the Palmview Community Facilities Network, as well as a proposed library.
Okay. That's great. Thank you very much for that. And my final question for you, and then I've got one more, through you, Mr Mayor. Are you certain that this is a better outcome for the community overall compared to where we were before this agreement?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, I honestly do believe that to be the case. I think particularly around the road network, I don't consider the road network as it currently stands is a particularly practical road network, in the sense that there is a long time before the release of EDs between Claymore Road and the Southern Road link. Just to go towards the traffic congestion that community is currently experiencing. We're up around 3,300 lots at the moment, and it technically wouldn't be triggered, the Southern Road link, till 4,000, so there would be a lot more traffic congestion to come, albeit obviously the state government has imposed a requirement for the Bruce Highway connection, which will alleviate that. I think the progressive release of EDs as being proposed will actually encourage the developers to actually build the road network. So yeah, I do honestly believe it's a better outcome for the community, and obviously significant benefit in terms of getting the much needed community facilities out there that this population deserves.
Thank you. And finally, through you, Mr Mayor, to the Divisional Councillor, if I may, are you convinced that this is the best outcome for your community?
That's a very good question. I honestly believe this is the best deal that we're going to strike. And I know that because I know the people involved and how hard they've worked, and the fact that I trust them. I trust them and I've got respect for them. And I've seen the way they go into battle for the community with the developers, because the developers ring me and they go, oh, that's a tough team to deal with. We don't like dealing with that team because they're all over it. It doesn't play into the developers' hand well. And that's a good thing for the community. I think this is the best deal we're going to get, and this reduces the risk, because at the moment we're dealing with what ifs. You know, are they going to build the road? When's it going to happen? And Bruce Highway is a clear example of that. There's been, I've written to the state government, where are the penalties for the delay in the Bruce Highway? Nothing, not interested. Oh, we'll keep an eye on it. Haven't really watched over it, but you know, the team have been working hard, and they've said if you do the Bruce Highway and it's delivered, we're going to talk about renegotiating and allowing more lots. And the developer has sped that up. In a perfect world though, you know, if I could go back and say it's a perfect world, I think there should be more roads in from day one. I mean, quite clearly the Bruce Highway and Claymore Road should be there from day one. But the developers will continually argue, and I'm not a developer, I'm not in that finance world, never pretend to be, but it's all about cash flow. They'll say, well, the board's not going to let us build this infrastructure unless we've got these 1,000 homes out there because it's all about cash flowing the development. I hear it all the time. But in a perfect world, more infrastructure would be in from day one. So to answer your question, I am feeling a lot more comfortable. I know that it's still some time before the town centre and the southern road will be built, but having that Bruce Highway access there, hopefully opening in December, is going to change a lot of lives and save a lot of time driving. And the safety of having a secondary access with the bushfire season is very important. So I am feeling a lot more comfortable to answer your question.
If I could just proffer a word, just looking back at the history of this particular development, and we can probably go back in my terms about 11 years. And at the time, council agreed to fund a significant portion of Claymore Road because of the lack of certainty, or indeed the great deal of uncertainty that existed about, would this project take off? We were living in a different world then, none of us had a crystal ball to look at and see what would be coming up in advance. So it's always really difficult. These are long, sort of drawn-out projects where decisions are made, well ahead of time. That money's been paid back to us with interest, and we've got a desperate shortage of roads. That's the irony of the situation. It's been so incredibly successful that keeping pace with all of the development has certainly been a challenge. That doesn't necessarily appease the people who live there, who are caught up in traffic jams every morning, and I empathise with them, but certainly I take great heart from the work our staff have done in putting together this deal. I think it stacks up very well, and it's good to see strong support from the local councillor. So with those few words, Councillor Dixon, would you like to close? Not necessary? Okay, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you to the team. Nicola and James, Brad and Grant, much appreciated. There are no notices of motion. There are no petitions. So that brings us to the next item, which is 11.1. But before we go into confidential session, I want to take us to 11.2, where councillors, wish to notify you that I may have a declarable conflict of interest in item 11.2, which is a confidential report, not for public release, but I'll make this declaration before we go into confidential session. The declarable conflict of interest may arise due to the fact that I received the following electoral donations. On the 25th of January 2012, I received a donation of $1,800 from Consolidated Properties Group Pty Limited. On the 5th of April 2012, I received a donation of $2,000 from Coolum Lakes Project Pty Limited. The cumulative total of these donations is $3,800. Mr. Donald O'Rourke is a director of Consolidated Properties Group Pty Limited and was a director of Coolum Lakes Project Pty Limited. Mr. O'Rourke is also the sole director of the Ninth Wave Pty Limited, which is the owner of the properties which are subject to this report. All of these electoral donations were received outside my relevant term as a councillor, which commenced on the 5th of April 2016, and therefore are not a prescribed conflict of interest within the context of the Local Government Act 2009. In relation to the matter which is the subject of the agenda item 11.2, I have no ongoing relationship with Mr. O'Rourke, the Ninth Wave Pty Limited, Coolum Lakes Project Pty Limited, or Consolidated Property Group Pty Limited, or their associated entities beyond having received the historical electoral donations which I've already outlined. On this basis, I've formed the view that I can appropriately manage any conflict should it exist, and that I can impartially make a decision in the public interest on the matter, which is the subject of agenda item 11.2, which is to be considered at the meeting today. I will now ask the Deputy Mayor to take the chair so that Council may consider whether or not I may participate in the discussion and decision for agenda 11.12. Thank you.
Thank the Mayor for his declaration. Councillors, in accordance with section 150 ES3BI of the Local Government Act 2009, I now call for a councillor to move that Councillor Jamieson either stay or leave the chamber for the duration of the discussion and this decision on this matter. Councillors, should the majority decide that it is in the public interest for the councillor to stay in the meeting for the duration of this matter, reasons for this decision need to be recorded in the minutes. So, councillors, it's either stay, leave, or stay for discussion, leave for the vote. Some councillor like to move one of those options.
I'm happy to move that he can, and item number 4 be the one. Interest is not considered to be sufficient to undermine the ability of the councillor to perform an impartial view and exercise their vote in the public interest.
Councillors, are there any questions or discussion? You're seconded. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any questions or discussion on that item? Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, to be true to form, I would like to ask Mayor Jamieson whether or not he has had any discussions with Don O'Rourke regarding the matter that we are just about to discuss.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez.
No, I've not. And where the request has been made, I've encouraged the proponent to engage with council via other means, but not through me.
Thank you, Mayor Jamieson. Any other questions, comments? That being the case, I'll put the motion to the vote that Councillor Jamieson stay and participate in the discussion and the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Cox, Councillor Natoli, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Dixon, Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Suarez, Councillor Law. But no, I'm against. So against, Councillor Babarowski. The motion's carried. Hand the chair back over to the Mayor.
Thank you. I've now got, again, before we go into confidential session, on item 11.3, I've got 3 declarations. And I understand that you want to declare and leave, Councillor Johnson, so I might handle yours first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question before is, can I be here for the discussions on 11.1 and 11.3, 11.2?
Yes.
And also 11.4? Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Mr. Mayor, I believe that my personal integrity is such that I wouldn't need to do this, but however, out of an abundance of caution, I, Councillor Winston Johnson, notify that I have a declarable conflict of interest in item 11.3, Planning Appeal Eumundi, to be considered at the ordinary meeting today on the 26th of October 23, due to a submitter to the appeal being a client of Your Insurance Broker Proprietary Limited, a company which I hold a financial interest. So the submitter has been a client of that business for some 30 or 40 years, well known to me, and he did actually contact me and I told him I couldn't be involved. But I will exclude myself from the meeting while the matter is being discussed and the vote is taken.
Thank you, Councillor. So you might, no, that's fine. You don't need to go until that item comes up. So I'll make another declaration. Councillors, I wish to notify you that I may have a declarable conflict of interest on item 11.3, confidential, not for public release, planning appeal Eumundi, to be considered at today's ordinary meeting. The declarable conflict of interest may arise due to the fact that I have received the following electoral donations. On the 16th of October 2015, I received $2,000 from Alex Rigby. On the 10th of March 2016, I received a donation of $2,500 from Altum Constructions. The cumulative total of these donations is $4,500. Further, I received the following electoral donations from Mr Andrew Stevens, who is the Managing Director of Project Urban Private Limited. On the 3rd of January 2012, I received a donation of $380, and on the 3rd of February 2012, I received a donation of $570. The cumulative total of the donations from Mr Stevens is $950. All these electoral donations were received outside of my relevant term as a councillor, which commenced on the 5th of April 2016, and therefore are not a prescribed conflict of interest within the context of the Local Government Act 2009. In relation to the planning appeal, which is the subject of the agenda item 11.3, it is my understanding that Alexander Rigby is a director of Eumundi Holdings Pty Limited, which was formerly registered as Altum Properties Pty Limited. Eumundi Holdings Pty Limited is the appellant in the matter which is the subject of this report. Project Urban, of which Mr Stevens is the Managing Director, is the planning consultant for Eumundi Holdings Pty Limited. I have no relationship, prior or ongoing, with Mr Rigby. Eumundi Holdings Pty Limited or Mr Stevens of Project Urban or their associated entities, sorry, I'll correct that. I have no prior or ongoing relationship with Mr Rigby of Eumundi Holdings Pty Limited, but do have a relationship with Mr Stevens of Project Urban because of the work he does in the development industry. And beyond having received the historical electoral donations from Mr Rigby, Mr Rigby did attempt to make contact with me via social media messaging services on the 28th of August 23 and the 30th of August 23, respectively. I did not respond to him, but rather arranged for a council officer to engage with him on council's behalf. On this basis, I have formed the view that I can appropriately manage any conflict should it exist, and that I can impartially make a decision in the public interest on the matter which is the subject of agenda item 11.3, which is to be considered at the meeting today. So I'll now ask the Deputy Mayor to take the chair so that Council may consider whether or not I may participate in the discussion and decision on item 11.3.
And I'd like to thank the Mayor for his declaration. Councillors, so once again, in accordance with Section 150 ES3(I) of the Local Government Act 2009, I now call on a councillor to move that Councillor Jamieson either stay or leave the chamber for the duration of the discussion and decision on this matter. Councillors, should the majority decide it is in the public interest for the councillor to stay in the meeting for the duration of this matter, reasons for this decision will need to be recorded in the minutes. So councillors either stay, leave, or stay for discussion and leave for the vote. Would a councillor like to move? Councillor Cox?
Thanks, Chair. I will actually move that the Mayor does not remain in the room for this particular item. I think the associations with the applicant are just too close for that public perception test. So I would actually seek Council's vote on that matter.
So we have a mover, seconded Councillor Hungerford. Would you like to respond or add any further information, Mr Mayor? No, you're happy with that?
Happy for Council to make the determination.
Any questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Cox?
And the comment is, I have no hesitation in the Mayor's able to manage that perception of conflict. However, it is, I think, the perception within the wider community that I'm just trying to protect him from, because I know in having worked with the Mayor for the last 11 years, his integrity is at the highest order, but I would just hate for the perception out in the community to be as such, which is detriment to his reputation.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hungerford?
I'm just going to outline why I seconded that. No, the Mayor's integrity I'm not pulling into account here, but because the appellant as one of the people named in there that's directly involved in this. I think that's a little stretch too far for me. Out of respect, I think the Mayor should be out of this one here to protect his own integrity in the public context.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through the Chair, I will be supporting Councillor Cox and Councillor Hungerford's comments on this one, which is contradictory to how I've just voted in the past declaration made by the Mayor, and the reason for doing so is because there was more than one entity who's involved in this declaration, and also because the final donation was very close to the reporting period, and I just wanted the Mayor to be aware of my rationale for my decision.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Any further questions or comments, councillors? In that case, I'll put the motion to the vote that Councillor Jamieson would not stay, would leave the meeting and not participate in the discussion or the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Cox, Councillor Dixon, Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Suarez. Those against? Councillor Law and Councillor... He can't make it a vote either. Okay. All right, so that's carried. On that item, you'll be required to leave.
That's fine. You want to hand back to me?
I do. Hand over back to you for the first item. Thank you.
No, I can't. No, you need to hold it because Councillor Natoli's got to make a
declaration
on the same item.
Lovely.
Councillor Winston won't be able to vote on that.
Lovely. So, councillors, we've had the Mayor's declaration. I now believe that, Councillor Natoli, you have a declaration.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. I, Councillor Joe Natoli, notified that I may have a declarable conflict of interest in confidential item 11.3 to be considered at the ordinary meeting on 26th of October 2023 due to I'm acquainted with James Brownsworth and Andrew Hillhouse, both submitters on this matter. I'm also acquainted with Mark Stockwell NC Proprietary Limited, are co-respondents on this matter. And I'm also acquainted with Andrew Stevens, obviously with him being involved with Project Urban. And in consideration of my declarable conflict of interest, I'm of the opinion that I can participate in the discussions and vote on the matter. In doing so, my participation will not lead to a decision that is contrary to the public interest. Further acknowledge the eligible councillors must by resolution decide my participation or otherwise in making a decision on this matter. And just before I hand it over to the councillors to make that decision, the only person that's contacted me was late yesterday afternoon was James Brownsworth. I said to him, if you're contacting me to talk to me about this matter, I can't talk to you. He said I was calling you about the other shopping centre application. I said, that's a live application, I can't talk to you, and that was the end of the conversation. I've had no other dealings with any of the other people on here. So.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. So, councillors, in accordance with section 150(s)(3)(bi) of the Local Government Act 2009, I now call for a councillor to move that Councillor Natoli either stay or leave in the chamber for the duration of the discussion and decision on this matter. Councillors, should the majority decide it is in the public interest for the councillor to stay in the meeting for the duration of this matter, reasons for this decision will need to be recorded in the minutes. So, councillor, stay, leave, or stay for discussion and leave for the vote. Councillor Dixon?
I'm actually happy to move that Councillor Natoli stays.
Okay, would we have a...
I've got, I believe it's, I'm just reading through 4 now. I'm actually going to say 4 if I can.
You certainly can. You've said it.
And am I able just to quickly speak on that?
Get a seconder first. Someone second, Councillor Suarez. By all means.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make the point. You know, obviously it's great that people acknowledge and put these things forward. That's the first step. Great to uphold the integrity of councillors. But, you know, it's quite clearly from what Councillor Natoli said, there's no financial exchange here. There's no favours owed. There's no perception that Councillor Natoli would be influenced to vote a certain way. In fact, he said, sorry, can't talk about the process, and he'll make his own vote, his own decision. So I'll move that he stays in the room.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Any other questions or comments? If I may, Councillor Tully, I'd like to ask a question. Just as you've described it as acquainted, would you sort of further elaborate on does that acquaintance extend into conversations about development in a general sense or a specific sense at some time?
The only person is obviously Andrew Stevens, who is involved in many different development applications, and in the past, those discussions and all of those meetings that I've had have always been declared, and, you know, make sure that council officers are present as well. The others are, in terms of obviously James Brownsworth, he's again another person who is a consultant, planning consultant, and the same that has applied with Andrew Stevens has applied to him. Andrew Hillhouse used to work for Maroochydore Council as an architect. I haven't seen him for many, many years. Same with Mark Stockwell. I ran into him during my term as Maroochydore Council. I haven't spoken to him ever, since I've been out of council. So it's been well and truly 15 years since I've spoken to either of those two people.
Thank you for that, Councillor Tully. Any other questions or comments? No. In that case, we'll put the motion to the vote that Councillor Tully may stay for the discussion and vote. All those in favour? Councillor Cox, Councillor Dixon, Councillor Suarez, Councillor Law. Those against? Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Hungerford. The motion is carried. You may stay for the discussion and the vote. I think that concludes the declarations. I'd like to hand the chair back over to the Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go into confidential session and then break for lunch and then come back and deal with the matters, the first of which obviously is 11.1, and then 11.2 and 11.3 before we finish up 11.4. And the councillors impacted by those decisions can leave those matters before they're commenced. So, councillors, before we move into confidential session, do any of you, sorry, we've done that, my apologies, next paragraph.
Should we just go into confidential session as we come back in afterwards?
Yeah, well, if we just, I'm just trying to think of valuing our time. So, in relation to item 1.1, the Chief Executive Officer advises that the report contains confidential information relating to legal advice being obtained by council and negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving council for which a public discussion would likely prejudice the interest of council. In relation to item 11.2, the Chief Executive Officer advises that the report contains confidential information relating to negotiations about a commercial matter involving council for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interest of council. In relation to 11.3, the Chief Executive Officer advises that the report contains confidential information regarding legal proceedings. In relation to item 11.4, the Chief Executive Officer advises that the report contains confidential information regarding negotiations about a commercial matter involving council for which the public discussion would likely prejudice the interests of council, and a matter council is required to keep confidential under formal arrangement with the state. For these reasons, it is recommended that council close the meeting under section 254J of the Local Government Act 2012 to consider and discuss the information in these reports. Noting, of course, that council's decision on these items will be made during open session and will be viewable to the public. So, councillors, is someone prepared to move that we close the meeting to discuss items 11.1, 11.2, 11.3 and 11.4? Councillor Dixon, seconded Councillor Cox. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. So we'll break now. I'm going to move that we standing orders and deal with the final 4 items in the order of 11.1, 11.2, 11.4, 11.3. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Okay. Now, nobody else needs to leave urgently, because if we potentially run the risk of not having a quorum. So let's get stuck into this. So the first item is 11.1, strategic land acquisition. We've got a mover in Councillor Suarez and a seconder in Councillor Hungerford. Would you like to speak to them? No? Okay. Is there anyone who'd like to ask questions on the recommendation? We'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 11.2, strategic land acquisition, moved by Councillor Suarez, seconded by Councillor Natoli. Anything you wish to raise, Councillor?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Just wanted to mention that both item 11.1 and 11.2 satisfy the long-term strategic directions under the Environment and Liveability Strategy.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We're moving to 11.4, the affordable housing project, moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Suarez. Are there any questions? Do you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Law, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. It is a testament to the team involved, from the councillors, the CEO, the Mayor, and Wendy, Deborah, the whole team, that we have arrived at this point in response to the Council's Housing and Homelessness Action Plan that was adopted by us in July this year. I can't tell you how satisfying it is that we are here ready to negotiate with the state to get to the next stage to deliver on our plan. So I'm looking for full support today in response and reflection of our full support of the Housing and Homelessness Action Plan of July this year. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I will not be supporting this one today. In my opinion, I feel we're getting to a realm that's in the state's responsibility, and my fear is in time this could become a burden for our ratepayers, so I will not support it today.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to say? No? We'll put the... Councillor Johnston.
Mr Mayor, I've got some concerns about it, but I'm going to vote for it at this stage. However, as time goes by and we get more information and documentation, I reserve my right to change my decision at that stage if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? So Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Cox, Natoli, Johnston, Suarez, Law and Jamieson. Those against? Councillor Hungerford. The motion's carried. Because of our conflicts, Councillor Johnston and I will depart the meeting for you to deal with 11.3, and I wish you well on that vote. Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So, councillors, I think the Mayor and Councillor Johnston have left with sufficient moment for them to depart. So we're now considering 11.3. planning appeal in Eumundi. Yep, no, I was just making sure that they had enough time. Now, I think from recollection you were for moving, and who was for seconding? Peter Cox. Okay, so councillors, we're now in a position to consider 11.3 planning appeal Eumundi. It's to be moved by Councillor Law and seconded by Councillor Cox. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yep. Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. I was elected to represent my community, and over the last 4 years, that community have made it crystal clear of their views in relation to this matter that is subject of the appeal, and they have made it very clear that they are looking to have this supported today, and I'm urging support from everyone in the room that we can move forward and represent our community, not only of Division 10, but the whole of the Sunshine Coast by supporting our community in this matter. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Mr Chair, I will not be supporting this today. And I gave my reasons quite strongly in the confidential session. And more importantly, if I did support this, I'd be breaking a key commitment I gave to the community at the last election. And when I give a commitment, I keep it.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Any other speakers? No. In that case, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the amended motion? Oh, sorry, my apologies. I'm not. So, Councillor Cox, Councillor Natoli, Councillor Suarez, Councillor Law, those opposed? Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Hungerford. The motion is passed. Thank you very much, councillors. Now, I believe, will the Mayor come back to close the meeting? Probably not. So, councillors, if there are no further items to be considered by council today, so I'd just like to thank meeting management, to the executive, to staff who have contributed to today's meeting. Thank you very much. It's been quite a complex OM, but one that was, I think, very good in the end for the results. So thank you very much, and I declare the meeting closed.